Hopefully everyone's checked in. Let's call this board to order. First thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Creator of all things, lover of all humankind, grant us wisdom during these budget negotiations. Remind us to leave our egos at the door and to work for the greater good for all citizens of Winnebago County. Amen.
Before we have the approval of this evening's agenda, I would like to change one thing underneath the presentation of the 2024 annual budget by Supervisor Damel. I would like to move the budgeting of the strategic priorities and outcome by Chris Fabian resource up first on that part. He has got an airplane to be catching, so he'll be the first one, and then we'll go the overview and then the department. So with that, Supervisor Albrecht. Motion made and second to adopt this evening's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Correspondence.
Tonight, we have one resolution from another county. It's from Outagamie County. It's resolution number 46, 2023-24, approving to request that the Wisconsin State Legislature revise Wisconsin statute subsection 66.0401, paren 1M paren, and Wisconsin statute 196.491, as noted on the resolution, to grant Wisconsin counties the authority to responsibly site utility-scale solar installations to maintain orderly planning and comply with the statutory requirement laid out in Wisconsin statute 66.1001, paren 3, to adhere to the objectives, goals, and policies contained in the county's comprehensive plan, and this will be referred to the legislative committee.
Okay. Now we have time allowed for anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the board on anything that has to do with whether it be budgets thing or anything within the county. Come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Paul Eisen, 1807 Brighton Beach Road, Fox Crossing, County Board, District 4. Our county executive has clearly directed this board that our participation in the budget process is to offer amendments to his executive budget. Mr. Chairman, I wish to share with the Board of Supervisors my intent to amend the 2024 executive budget by adding an additional section to the budget appendix. In 2007, I unsuccessfully attempted to amend the executive budget to add the solid waste department to the budget. That effort did not go unnoticed, and in 2008, the solid waste department was added to the appendix of the next executive budget. What I have learned is that it is our responsibility to amend the executive budget, and I will offer an amendment requesting an appendix section entitled ARPA/Spirit Fund to enhance financial transparency in the footsteps of Brown County, Wisconsin. I invite all supervisors to inquire of my amendment and to co-sponsor this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board this evening? Anyone else wishing to speak to the board this evening? Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? Not seeing anyone on Zoom. That part is closed. So next, the 2024 county budget.
No,
I think that's wrong. Reports should be next. Reports, committees, commissions, and boards.
oh, no, I know. You're supposed to say that this has all been published and that
Oh, okay.
pursuant to, that's
The
what that means.
2024 county budget, public hearing pursuant to Wisconsin Stats 6590 90, parent 4, has all been published as supposed to be, and everything is as accorded to by state statute 65.90, parent 4.
That's what that was. Now, reports.
Now we're ready for reports from committees, commissions, and boards. My thing went out here, so I don't have anybody. I think this is just the start of the budget session. Okay. Find your way. Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to report that last week, Monday, October 23rd, we had our legislative committee at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. I called the meeting to order, and then I had to cancel the meeting because we did not have a quorum. And we had two of our legislators there. So we will be having another ledge committee in January, I believe. So if you would, as chairman of your committees, please do try to attend, because our legislators are taking their time to attend that meeting. So let's all try to have a quorum at least, so we can call the meeting to order in January. Thank you.
Supervisor Hran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that this Saturday between 11 and 2 is pizza pickup at Sunnyview Expo Center. Thank you.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I'm just looking for a point of information. If I were to present a motion to suspend a rule. When in the agenda would that motion take place?
The last corporation council to be sure it's said right.
Did you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh.
if you want to know when you can move to suspend a rule, you could do it now as well.
Okay. Do you want me to wait until you go through committees, commissions, and boards before I do that?
That would be good if you would. I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of correction, there were actually 3 legislators from Madison who attended the legislative meeting on last Monday. Thank you.
Supervisor Bender.
Just, if you are the chairman and you can't make it, the vice chair can come and take your place. So if you know you're not gonna make it, check with the vice chair, and if the vice chair can't make it, then if you could, let Supervisor Fari know so that we don't all show up there and then we don't have a meeting. It's like, I won't take the $75 because we didn't have, or $50, we didn't have a meeting, but I did get up and basically make an attempt to go there. It's not fair to the rest of the supervisors that did come to the meeting and then basically end up just turning around and going home. So if you could, just take the time to at least notify the chairman of the committee, Supervisor Fari, that you nor the vice chair will be able to attend.
Supervisor Defferday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Safe Streets Committee, or Safe Streets Initiative, met on October 27th at noon in the chambers of Judge Brian Keberline's office, and or courtroom, I should say. And just a review for the board, the Safe Streets meeting, or the Safe Streets Initiative, is where you can actually get numbers in regards to our Connect program, as well as all of the district attorneys' diversion programs. And that's where we can discuss a little bit about what we can do regarding those diversion programs and how we can shape it, going forward. We had a lot of really good discussion. We elected Judge Gibbs to be the new drug court judge, and we had Representative Schraw attending as well. And that's all I have. Our next Safe Streets meeting is, let me get my calendar up here, January 26th at noon at Judge Keberline's chambers again.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I respectfully place a motion to suspend Rule 11.6 of the County Board Rules for the entirety of the 2024 budget session. The rule states as follows: all votes cast shall be cast only if the supervisor is present at his or her desk in the officially designated county board / committee physical meeting space.
Seconded. Discussion.
There's no debate on this.
Is there a vote on it, or?
There's a vote of 2/3.
Okay. 2/3 to pass it?
Yes.
Members present or none?
2/3 of members present pursuant to Rule 13.1 of the County Board Rules.
So if you think that people can vote at home or whatever, not in their seats, go ahead and vote A. If you don't think they should be able to, vote nay. We'll be putting it up here in a minute.
So there's no discussion?
No, there's no
There's no discussion. So you can do it on your iPads. That's all I was told, and I was told there was no discussion. So if you feel as though a person can vote other than being in their seats,
Point of order, we had discussion last year. I can tell you that I'm looking at the rules, and it says there is no debate on a motion to suspend.
so those in favor, vote on your iPad A. Those that aren't in favor, vote nay.
13.
And that fails. So you must be in your seat to vote. Okay, next is the county executive's report. Pardon? I'm sorry, county board, county executive, county board chairman's report. I excused as Supervisor Robinson. And the other thing I would like to say is that when we get to the budget session tonight, I plan to go no later than 9 o'clock this evening. That's the plans as of right now. And then tomorrow we'll start at 8:30. If you want coffee, rolls, milk, sodas, or whatever, be here before 8:30. I believe they'll be in the back. But at 8:30 we'll start the budget session. We'll break about noon. If someone's talking or whatever, we won't break right then, but we plan to break at noon, and we'll have a 1-hour recess from the time that we break. And we'll go right back into it. So, I will ask if anybody have any questions on that. Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you have an idea of when things will end tomorrow?
Talk about completely, if you want to have it done completely.
No,
Well, it depends on how long you want to stay. I can
Just-
stay and get it all done in one day, but otherwise, usually around 4 o'clock is usually what we try to do. That's a good long day.
thank you.
Like I say, if there's just a few things left, we'll continue on.
Thank you.
Supervisor Swan,
Can we vote to stay later?
you can vote, yes.
So,
So,
can we do that now or tomorrow?
we'll wait and see what tomorrow brings. We might be all ready to get out of here, but you never know. Supervisor Gabbard.
Planning and Zoning Committee has a public hearing tomorrow night at 6:30 at the David Albrecht Building. So those of us that are on that committee, I think at least 3 of us, if not 4 or 5, decided we're going to get up, going to drive over there, go to the one item, come back, if we're still in session. Because that public hearing was posted and we can't cancel it. So if you see 5 of us get up and leave, don't be offended. We're going to do business over there and we'll be back. If we're still in session, that's.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will there be a break for lunch? Are you providing lunch, or should we pack a lunch?
You will be on your own for lunch.
Thank you. And how much time do we have?
1 hour from the time we break.
Thank you.
Geez, your mind is large. Okay.
No, it is. All right, any other questions about budget session before we get going into it? Great. No, I didn't forget about it. Just wanted to know if there's any other questions about budget sessions. Okay. If not, at this time, I would like to ask George Bureau to please come up forward here by the lectern. And this is my appointment for District 29. He's from Oak Ridge Road and Nina, so come up and
All right, well, good evening, everybody on the board, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. My name is George Bureau. I'm from Neenah, Wisconsin. I've been in Wisconsin for about 22 years. Full disclosure, I'm a Penn State Nittany Lion fan, but I'm married to a Wisconsin Badger girl, so it's kind of one of those mixed things going on. But what brings me here, I'm very deeply patriotic. I'll tell you that right now. I get very involved as a citizen throughout my career. I like to make a difference because I believe the strength of our country starts at the local level, the towns, the counties, and it builds up from there. And that's really what brings me as far as the why. My background, so you all know, I'm actively gainfully employed. I work with Wisconsin manufacturers around the state on a daily basis, helping them get to the next level of performance. I've got a very strong business background. I've run a $200 million business, a $15 million business, been involved in a startup. You know, I've had a whole series of roles. So again, I look at things holistically, again, from the perspective of where do we want to go and how do we get there. So I'm honored to be considered for this role tonight. And if it's okay, I can open up for questions, I will.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, so any questions for me? Not that easy, I hope, but, all right. There might be one.
Are you serving any other capacity in public office?
I'm not serving any other capacity in public office, no. I'm active outside of work, but I'm not in public office. Yes, sir.
Is Penn State going to beat Wisconsin in football?
Oh, we always have that going on in our house when we play, yes. But I don't think we played it, okay? Now, Michigan's it's a big question, we'll see.
Okay, let's step over here and swear you in.
Do we vote on this appointment?
Yes, you do.
Do you vote before you swear him in?
Yes, I do. So, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Carried. Raise your right hand. I, George Bureau, have been elected to the office of County Board Supervisor,
Having been elected to the office of County Board Supervisor,
District 29,
District 29,
swear that I will support
swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Okay. Resolution number 276-102023, adopting the 2024 county budget and levying property taxes. I will so move. Been seconded. All right. We'll have a presentation now of the budget on how it's going to work by the Chris Fabian. I believe I'm saying it right.
Okay. Fabian, all right. I'm back. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of County Supervisors. Thank you to the county executive and to staff who we were able to spend some time with today. My name is Chris Fabian, and I'm the CEO of a budget company. Imagine that, a business around budgeting. And here you are entering into your budget session. Next slide, please. What I want to talk about is work that Winnebago County has embarked upon in a process called priority-based budgeting. Priority-based budgeting is a way to rethink your budget. It's a way to rethink how your resources, your community's resources, are invested into the outcomes that you are trying to fulfill. We talked with staff earlier today as they've been going through this priority-based budgeting process with us for the better part of the last few months. And you'll hear about this in bits and pieces throughout some of their presentations throughout, as they have begun to think about the budget differently. The way that budgets are currently done is on a line item basis. And line item budgeting has stayed the test of time. Line item budgeting I was at a presentation just 2 years ago when it celebrated its 100-year anniversary. Talk about innovation. Line item budgeting has been around for quite some time, and line item budgeting is not going away. However, the need to rethink the budget is something that most in public service, from an elected official perspective, an executive perspective, or a staff perspective, have long desired. And in my work to create this priority-based budgeting process, the idea was, how can we begin to get more out of understanding the budget so that you all, in your seats, can really appreciate to the greatest extent possible that what you're adopting maximizes value to the community. And that's what we're trying to do. Next slide, please. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your journey and what priority-based budgeting is meant to do. And in doing so, I'll have a chance to talk about what you've done thus far and the journey that the county is on.
Excuse me, Chris, I just want to tell them that you all have a copy of it on your desk.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Priority-based budgeting doesn't happen overnight. This is budget transformation to take your line item approach and evolve it. And you are in your first few months of this work, but well on your way towards progress. The very first part of the value proposition of priority-based budgeting is really coming to understand your budget in a new way around the outcomes that you're striving to achieve. Next slide, please. When I first started, I worked in county government, and when this process was invented, my own board held up a page out of the budget that looked like this, and they said, as we were getting closer to adoption, this is a document that we've been spending days and hours trying to understand and appreciate. Are these the best decisions we can make for our community? And our board said, where on this sheet, on this schedule, can I find how much we're investing in the safety and well-being of our community? And you'd scan and look at any given line item like office supplies, you'd look at contracted services. They'd say, how much are we spending to make our county government more efficient? And where can we learn that from this schedule that we have? And they'd look at postage. And next slide. And the takeaway for me was that nowhere in the document was it evident and crystal clear how to take the line items that we work so hard on to understand how much we're spending on any given accounting category and make the leap towards what we're trying to deliver to our community at large. We know departments, we know divisions, we know line items very well, but something's missing. And our work in priority-based budgeting intends to bridge that gap, to really translate the investment in line items to the programs that you provide and the outcomes that you're striving to deliver. Next slide, please. This is just one illustrative visualization of an organization who now can see their budget from a results-first perspective. Being able to understand what it is you're trying to deliver, whether it's a safe community or economic vitality or greater transportation system or a high-performing government that produces efficiency for taxpayers and aims to measure how much of your budget goes towards achieving those outcomes and by what programs across all of the departments. That's one key area where your departments are hard at work right now, is having identified not only the line items in their budget, but each and every program and service that they provide. That's part of the work that they have gone through yet this year and will continue to evolve that. As it pertains to these key strategic plan goals, I'll be back, Fabian, back again, to work with department staff and the County Board of Supervisors to help you to develop what it is that you stand behind by way of priorities, because that will be part of your continued evolution, is how to take programs and evaluate them relative to priorities. The first step that staff has gone through thus far is to identify the programs they provide and the allocation of line item budgets towards those programs. That's where we've made the most progress. But by coming to understand the priorities that you're striving to achieve, we can then take the programs that the departments fund in their budget and look towards how do those programs actually impact the results you're trying to accomplish. Go ahead to the next slide. Next year at this time, when you sit down to the budget session, the types of choices that departments have put in front of you, their budget proposals, their decision packages, will have a new lens on them, the lens of prioritization and ranking. And I want to give you a little bit of a look ahead to what that's going to look like. Next slide, when budget decisions are driven by priorities. See, a lot of the communities we work with, this is an example of one, actually do a lot of great work on developing a strategic plan. That's what I'm intending to show here is you'll see glossy documents, great strategic plan outcomes, and then a big leap back to the same culprit, the line items, where a bridge is missing to help to understand how these line items actually translate to the strategic outcomes they're trying to accomplish. And that will be the bridge building, so to speak, that we do with your organization as you evolve your work. Next slide, please. When it starts to come together, and I know I'm going to use a city example, even though I'm a county guy, I come from county government, the city of Flagstaff, Arizona is to be commended, and you can look online and see some of their budget work. But as you see here, they started with their key community priorities. Again, the work that I'll be doing together with you all to establish these reasons for being in local government. Next slide. But as their budget comes together, what's remarkable is that you begin to see each and every department, here's a department of community development, by the programs they provide, from inspections to code compliance to public housing and plan, permit, and project review. You can see what you're investing in each and every program, backed up by line items, of course, and the budget requests at a program level, so that from your seat, you're not having to try to dissect, why is this new request for office supplies coming to me, and should I approve it or should I deny it? But instead, how does that request for a line item, like office supplies, relate to a program, like inspections, which relates to your growth or development overall? And by translating line items to programs, we gain a far better understanding of what it is that the departments are intending to do by way of their budget. They're trying to fund programs. And why are they trying to fund programs? Because they're trying to deliver results, outcomes, and that will be what we ultimately measure. For each and every budget request, next slide please, we can see a specific page about that budget request. And where I want to draw your attention to the most is not only can we begin to see the cost of a budget request broken down by personnel or non-personnel, those are still important things to consider, but ultimately as you pan your eyes down towards that 4-bar chart, by scoring and evaluating programs relative to your priorities, as well as other reasons that you provide them, and you see them here on their sheet, is the program mandated? Is there a state or federal mandate that requires us to provide it? Is it not mandated, but is it required by your own ordinances or resolutions, your own self-mandates, if you will, your own policies? Or is it not mandated whatsoever? You want to know that about every program that you provide. You want to know, is the demand going up for a program? Is the demand flat, or is the demand decreasing? You might want to know, what portion of the population does this program serve? Does it benefit everybody, or does it benefit a limited constituency? It might make a difference. And how does this program help you achieve outcomes like a safer community or economic vitality, greater transportation system, efficiency overall in local government? And at the end of this scoring, all scoring and program evaluation is an answer to the question, how relevant is this program to you? And we rank the programs. And that's what you see in that bar chart. Imagine having for yourselves an understanding top to bottom of every program you provide by name from every department, the costs of the program, which is what your departments have gone through thus far. If that program is mandated, how mandated is it? Is demand going up? Is demand going down? And how does it relate to your priorities such that you could differentiate your highest priority programs from programs that, at the end of the day, are less relevant to everything else that you provide? thereby equipping you, giving you some levers to ask good questions and be able to say, with the scarce resources that you have, because we're always in somewhat of a resource scarcity position, what are we going to keep with our budget? What is the best that we can fund with the budget that we have, rather than focusing the discussion on what do we want to cut? What do we want to keep? And that's the heart of priority-based budgeting. Next slide. As Flagstaff moved through their budget process, again with that 4-bar mentality, quartile 1 being the highest, most relevant programs that you provide, quartile 2 being also relatively important, quartile 3 almost as relevant as quartile 2 and ultimately quartile 4. What you're seeing here, when it came to a presentation like you are about to hear from their version of the county exec, the city manager's recommended budget in Flagstaff's case, you can see that the majority of the budget requests and approvals are the quartile 1 and quartile 2 requests, meaning departments are trained to submit requests that align with the priorities that you're striving to achieve. They rank highly because they scored well. That's what you're seeing in this particular graph. And the city of Flagstaff's leaders, as they look towards the bottom, are happy to report that even in quartile 4, they're down to things that, while less relevant to the overall objectives that the organization is striving to achieve, they're the bare minimum of things that are still perhaps mandated. So you can start to whittle away at things that, we have to do it. We wish we didn't necessarily have to, but can we tighten up as much as possible on those programs that have a little less to do with the outcomes we're striving to achieve, but might still be required by law. So that's how you start to use this tool, is to chip away, to really focus your investment decisions, what are you going to fund in the budget, on the highest priority items, quartile 1 and quartile 2, while looking for ways to free up and reallocate budgetary spending in quartile 3 and quartile 4 programs overall. And that's what you're starting to see take place in Flagstaff, and that's what you will start to see in your own county as you start to evolve your work in priority-based budgeting. Next slide, please. I'm quickly coming to a conclusion, but as you start to really see this process take hold, and now I'm welcoming you to the future, you will start to get used to these discussions. What programs do you offer? How much do they cost? Is this program mandated? It's a low priority program. It's not mandated. Demand's going down. It's not serving the majority of our population. Have we thought about resource reallocation? Have we thought about efficiencies? Have we thought about partnerships? Have we thought about decreasing the service levels altogether for these particular programs? And it's at that point where we really start to focus the discussion on resource reallocation overall. Next slide, please. This particular chart, if you're familiar at all with the work that Washington County, Wisconsin did in priority-based budgeting, this particular chart was the framework for Washington County as they began to focus on a tight budget, a flat budget, property tax mill levies that they were holding tight and actually reduced, as they continued to actually fund new needs for programs. So what Washington County proved is that you can be fiscally responsible and still grow some programs that are in need. How do you do that? You do it exactly how you see here in the blueprint. If you have new needs and new funding requirements, you have several options. One, you can free up the current budget that you have and simply spend it differently. And another is generate new revenue. Washington County looked at sourcing programs differently, finding program efficiencies, reducing service levels where it made sense to do so in low priority, low mandated programs that were not paying for themselves, where demand was going down. They looked for new revenue opportunities where there's cost recovery, entrepreneurial new revenue generation sources, grant funding. Where can we look at those programs that aren't recovering their costs? And ultimately, we can look at rates and such, but it's a last resort. And we're trying to, again, give you the options, give you all the levers and the departments to turn over every rock before turning to additional resources outside of the control of your organization. Washington County has been written about in Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, Financial Foundations for Thriving Communities. It's the textbook on greatness for government finance. as they have successfully demonstrated how they freed up over 13% of their budget. 13% of their budget has been freed up and reallocated in Washington County. It's a tremendous amount, and it's a huge success story. And the greatest achievers in priority-based budgeting have been able to prove that 10% resource reallocation is attainable. It's attainable by dedication to this process. We get the data, we're data-driven, we get not just line items, but the programs we offer, all the characteristics of programs, how they relate or don't relate to your priorities, basic program attributes, and focusing on a blueprint like what you see here to identify opportunities and take action in the budget. And that will be the core of our work as we evolve your work, accomplishments thus far in priority-based budgeting into next year. Please go to the next slide. I have a couple slides to give you a simple illustration to leave in your mind. You take a line item like postage. Everybody knows postage. And right now you have the opportunity to look at any given department. In this organization we worked in, you could easily come to analyze how much of that postage budget goes to the water department or the parks department or to finance. And inside, we want to identify these reallocation opportunities or these chances to save money. And the problem with only having line item information and department information is if we wanted to shave 10% of this postage budget, if we wanted to shave part of the water budget or parks, we wouldn't necessarily know what we're changing. And that's the murky part below. But next slide. With the data that you've already begun to develop, and this is illustrative of how people use program and priority-based budgeting, we can say that postage in the water department is used for a program like mailing utility bills, or a program like sending out notices, or water quality samples back to the lab. And with that kind of information about how that postage budget is used, we can then focus on program changes, innovations. Maybe we don't need to mail our utility bills. Maybe we can go paperless and we'll save on postage. Maybe we can have a different way to look at water quality samples or notices, or in parks, mailing catalogs. How can we switch online, save paper, save postage, free up the resources, and make better use of those line items overall? That's where we're headed, is what I'm excited to say. Next slide. So where I leave you tonight is that you in Winnebago County are on a journey right now. I've focused the entirety of the presentation on why you do priority-based budgeting, but to shift for the very last slide, next slide, to the how, this is your path. You and your organization have already begun to leverage your line item data. We talked to departments this morning as many and most of them have identified the programs that they already provide. Some have also embarked, actually the vast majority of the budget has been allocated to programs. That step 3, program costing. Program scoring will be next. And in order to do program scoring, I'll be back because I have to be here to understand, what do you want us to score programs against? What are your priorities? What do you think defines the relevance of local government here in Winnebago County? What are all the reasons why you use resources from your community in the budget? And that will be the definition of your strategic plan for the purposes of priority-based budgeting, so we can score and rank those programs and help you as you then move into your own resource reallocation and budget discussions next year. That does bring my presentation to a conclusion. I think it's remarkable how far Winnebago County has come in the first few months of your work. And we work with cities and counties across the country, from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Los Angeles, California, Wyandotte County, Kansas, to Jefferson County and Marathon County and Washington County here. And Winnebago County is right there, deserved of your credit as a leader in taking on something that is not trivial, but will transform the way you see the budget. So I hope that excites you as you kick off the budget session. I'm happy to take questions, but I know if that's appropriate, but I know that we have a lot of work to do yet tonight. and I appreciate having the chance to be here.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering who picks the priority. If you ask a young family, they're going to say things like, which the county doesn't cover, childcare, parks, 4-H, the county fair. If you ask an older person, they're going to say Aging and Disability Resource Center and Parkview Nursing Home. Depending on where you are in life, will make a decision about what you think is a priority. It seems very subjective.
It's a great question, and we're going to get into it. So we have to come to an understanding of all the reasons why you think this organization exists. And is it appropriate to use county resources on something like the amenities that you described overall? We need to understand comprehensively what it is that you're in business to do. And there are ways that we can rank the priorities themselves on relevance overall, but you are a community, and we have to get it all on the table. So you will see a cross-cutting set of results or priorities that we'll score against, and it will, our process that we recommend is much like what Marathon County went through. We'll work with departments to come to understand what they would want to have in front of you, to advise you in terms of the work that they currently do. But the real work then will begin to come to understand what you consider to be the priorities overall, and it's plural. And we score programs across all of them. And the programs that have the highest degree of impact on the cross-cutting reasons for being, in addition to degree of mandate, population served, demand, cost recovery, all the reasons why you might provide something that you agree are the reasons to provide it, will raise higher in the priority ranking.
Supervisor Bender.
I actually have two questions. First one, how many of the 72 counties right now are participating in this?
In Wisconsin?
Right.
Washington County, Jefferson County, Marathon County, Winnebago County.
So you got 468 basically are not.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like a guinea pig. And then my next question would be, like, when you're setting up these committees, who is going to be on these committees? The actual committee, basically, that, say for Parkview, they have their own basically committee that basically determines what they think should be part of Parkview's budget. Who is going to set that up? I mean, the county board passes the budget. Doesn't matter what the county exec puts in. We can take it in or put it out. We appropriate the money. So is the county board members going to be a part of this, or is this just going to be a management team, kind of like the budget session where they did this on their own and we had no part of it until tonight?
At least so county board sets the budget. County priorities will come from the board.
But if we're not a part of that meetings to determine which programs are basically essential, then we'll have to basically wait until you tell us that you believe that this program is not essential and we should eliminate it. If we're not going to be a part of that, I would think that some members of this county board would be a part of that so that they're part of making that decision. Yeah. It wouldn't just be like this budget right now, we had no input on it. It was set up by the county exec and his staff, and this is the first time we're going to have impact. And when you start basically going through the priorities of this county, I would think you'd want some input from the committee, at least the chairman or the vice chair, to basically get their opinion of what they believe is important to that organization.
Yeah, point well taken, and we'll incorporate it into the design of the priorities. There are even ways to invite board input into the scoring process itself. So thanks for your feedback.
Supervisor Haran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this go about identifying if there are duplications of services? That's number one.
Yes, you will see that across all of the program inventory. If there's redundancy or duplication, an opportunity for partnership, not only within the county, but also looking out towards other organizations.
So you're starting to speak in terms of having charities involved in helping us not duplicate services.
Let me say it differently. One way that priority-based budgeting data has been used, including in Washington County, is they took their data and they shared it with other entities in the community and said, here's what we're doing, and here's how much it costs us to do this program. Do you do anything similarly? And that was a part of an effort that they had to understand if there are partnership opportunities in their community.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Who goes about getting the data? Is it the employees, the staff that go about doing that? Who, is it your corporation that does that?
We're in partnership with you. So we're working with department heads to identify what are the programs that you offer, and where we step in as well as not only training, but also here's other county organizations that we've seen. Here's a health department like you have, and not to say that we know exactly what happens in your health department, but we have a pretty good list of county health departments that we would, for example, use to help get a really good program inventory. That's what we're working on right now.
Okay, thank you. And then my last one is, who does the prioritizing? And this goes back to Supervisor Bender's point. Is it the department? Is it the staff? Is it the administration? Is it the supervisors? And where does the entire discussion come into the process?
So first and foremost, let me try to describe, you're setting the scoring criteria, the board. So that defines how you can achieve a high score. If I'm a department, I need to respond back to your priorities and score my programs relative to those priorities overall. And so I don't prioritize them if I was a department. The prioritization is an outcome of the impact or lack thereof that my programs have on your priorities.
Interesting. A new way to think about it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't really, I wanted to hear a little more from you when you were answering Supervisor Powers' question, because part of this process I would think would also have to do with the dynamics of the community, whereas say we have an aging community, so we're going to need to focus more on things towards people who are getting older, and we don't have as many young people living here and having children. Is that also going to skew these ratings and how that all works?
I would say, I would hope that as the evaluation criteria gets settled, we need to hear from the board. These are your priorities as you're working on them. Do you think we're missing anything? And if you were on the lookout for the fact that you have an aging community, you are a voice for your constituents to say, I think we're missing something in these priorities overall. I don't think that everybody would agree that this is everything that we're in business to do. That's what we're looking for, ultimately, when I come back.
So that would be part of the process in assisting you is saying, hey, this is what we see, this is what we know in our community. Why aren't we taking this into consideration?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Supervisor Albrecht.
On number 4, between number 4 and number 5, you should have that light bulb, bright idea. And then after 5, take action, you should have the light bulb going dim, and then a question saying that's just not us, that's just not us to do, I mean, it's just a following of,
Yeah.
just a comment.
Appreciate it.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a program involved to work through this? Is it compatible with our iPads, and what are you selling it for? I assume you're selling something.
Good question on the iPads. Most people use it on the laptop. And at the same time, I'll get back to you on how it functions on an iPad. It's fairly robust in the budget.
And its cost?
Its cost overall, the county has invested
$175 total on the strategic plan and priority based budget.
Yeah.
Already paid.
175, 175,000? Thank you.
Supervisor Flom.
One of the questions that I would have is the input that our constituents would be able to take up. When I've looked at some of the other municipalities that have done priority-based budgeting, that's been something that they value very highly, and I'd like to see us do that here. Currently, I don't think our budget process, outside of public comment, allows enough for constituent input. So in your opinion, where does this give us any leeway for that? Ultimately, I think it's the board that should be setting these priorities, but I want our constituents to have a voice in this too. Where do they fit into this?
Across the experiences that we've had, great question. Most communities will get off and running with, can you master the process? And can you learn how to drive it, essentially? But then inviting resident input, community input into those priorities has been something that communities have done. So we've seen, like Duluth, Minnesota and Battle Creek, Michigan have invited residents to help them to identify their priorities overall and define them or rank them. We've had some communities actually invite residents to practice, to take a look at the programs and give us a sense for, do you think this program has a high impact on an outcome like safe community or economic vitality? Those are definitely things that would be strong considerations as you evolve your work. So this is a process that will evolve for you over time, and many good examples for how to invite resident feedback into it. Public dashboards as well, inviting resident feedback online, which might go back to the iPad comment too. Just how can you engender discussion from your community by sharing the data overall? Those have been ways that it's been done.
Thank you. I'm a big believer in transparency, and this is probably something that has to be transparent throughout, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to sort of echo off of Supervisor Powers, Supervisor Flom, Supervisor Binder. I'm concerned about the input process. I'm concerned about who really does the priority base. I hear what you're saying. I know what the end goal is, but not really a question. I'll just say that something about this makes me very uneasy. I can't tell you exactly what it is. So I'm looking for other input from other supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the presentation. Do you have a sense from some of these other communities about what it takes after the program's been launched to, continue to evaluate, train, and present budgets in this way?
Yeah, great question. Embedding it into your budget decision-making process and asking questions about what program does this impact and what outcome does this help us to achieve, or what multiple outcomes are ways to bake it into the DNA of decision-making. That's one major way that communities have been able to do it. Using the priority-based budgeting data outside of the budget process. So any normal committee meeting, any board meeting, you have something on the agenda, think about, I wonder what programs this resolution is going to impact. I wonder what outcomes this resolution is going to impact. I want to see where the priority-based budgeting data fits in. We had some staff earlier today, some departments talking about how they might develop key performance indicators to tie into their programs to help better describe how those programs impact outcomes. Oh, that's a great idea. Those are numerous ways to start to bake it into your everyday deliberations and discussion and decision-making process using this key business intelligence is what it is, the data of priority-based budgeting.
Awesome. Do you have a sense, though, of what does it take to implement that? Is Duluth hiring a person whose job it is to help develop those, key performance metrics, or, to help committees think about structuring those conversations? Because I think all of that is really, really great ways to start to shift these conversations. And for the board, most of the questions people are going to ask, certainly the questions I'm going to ask over the next day and a half or so, are going to be exactly that. What does this line item get us to? How does this contribute to this, theme that we're hearing about the department? So I'm really excited about that outcome. I think though each of those elements takes something: time, money, a person, something that we're currently not getting to in order to, spend the time training on this. And just curious, if you could reflect on some other communities' experiences, or if communities are far enough down the line that you've worked with from their, sort of original assessment.
Yeah. I think, just to be totally honest and transparent, there's a lift involved. I mean, there's staff required to do some of this work. To make the transformation is less about flipping the switch on a piece of technology. It's more about the analytical horsepower and staffing resources to help support it overall. We've seen varying degrees of communities with different means to be able to staff their work. And you will see some trade-offs. There's some benefit too. Maybe some work that you used to do in the budget process, you can swap out in the spirit of resource reallocation. So you will see some efficiencies gained. There's no question about that. But I think it's right to have it in your mind that there's lift involved, and that's part of the work for successful communities.
And are there examples that other communities have, that you can share about how they've, tried to keep that culture, or that, push that shift forward?
Yeah, I mean, some communities have hired a priority-based budgeting person to manage it. Not all. So that has worked in a county exec office. I mean, you have role players like that right now who are doing some of that work. But whether it's in a budget office, county executive office, we have had communities for sure add new staff to be the owner of the priority-based budgeting data and process overall. It has worked well. Not everybody can afford that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Supervisor Ernst.
Thank you. Great presentation. My question involves the sort of the priorities themselves. So looking at the Flagstaff example, we see a few different community priorities, the titles of which I feel don't give us a lot of insight into what that priority actually is.
Good point.
So, I mean, will our priority, do the communities sort of have a more fleshed out version of each of these? Because each of these sounds potentially incredibly vague, therefore lending itself to endless debate on every item in the budget.
You got it. I'm sorry I did not bring that in a slide, but for every one of these priorities, there are lengthy descriptions of all the ways to achieve it. If I were a department and I had a program, each of these priorities has result definitions, or what the vernacular is in our language, and that's used to help me make my case that if I'm going to try to prove to you that my program impacts robust, resilient economy, I have to use the agreed upon definitions of your community to do that. So yes, I did not include that here, but you're right.
Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for your presentation. I'm hearing some of maybe the uneasiness of the board. Are you going to be taking hardline data numbers? The average age of somebody in Winnebago County is X. The employment is Y, and using those data points in coming up with your conclusion in this process?
I won't. I might invite you to ask about, as you're evaluating priorities and results definitions, as we were discussing, I would encourage your commentary on, does this reflect our community, or does this reflect a very small portion of our demographics? Who are we looking out for? What's our future? Is that part of your rationale? That's what I'd hope that you get into, and I have to push you there.
Thank you.
Supervisor Ellenberger.
This is actually for Supervisor Bureau because he doesn't have a
just talking about
iPad.
him.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
I would like to add just one thing. Thank you for your presentation, since I'm one here before I pass you on to the other supervisor. I'm seeing this as a positive. I'm seeing this as more of, we're seeing the programs where they overlap, and maybe perhaps we don't have to do that anymore. We can make the partnerships, which I really like, and also where we may be lacking, we could also identify that as we're going through this process. And I think I was on the school board for many years, and we always had this goal every year set, and we tried to get to that goal. Maybe it was low graduation rates, and then we would have that one big priority that the entire district was working on. And it was nice because we saw something that we needed to do, and we worked towards it. And I think it's a great way to try to figure out a goal. So I'm going to hand you off to Supervisor Bureau.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fabian. Thank you, Chairman. Would it be beneficial over the ensuing months as we move this direction to understand for each of the programs that's in here, what does success look like? And then how do we know that we're on track for success, that we're trending the right direction?
Both, I'd say yes, twofold, both on the results side, the priority side of things. I've used that interchangeably.
Then on the leading indicator side, which points towards success.
Yep.
If we watched the Packer game, we knew by the second quarter where it was going, right? So,
Hey, I live in
okay,
Denver.
yeah. Same parallel, so thank you.
Supervisor Dowling, she'll be behind you on Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious to know how much your contract is for the presentation for looking at all of this.
Was that the full package was 175,000, not all of Resource X contract, but for the full strategic plan, priority-based budgeting, including this tool.
Including the tool. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
You bet.
I just have one question. I think I hear this from a lot of them. You keep on saying the board, you're going to come to the board and for asking for questions. We've never seen you even here until this evening. So it kind of makes some of us uneasy on you're doing these things now. So what guarantee are you going to give us you're going to come back to the board and ask these questions? It's not just going to be done. Nothing wrong with administration, but it seems like it's all going through them. It isn't even coming to the board.
Yeah. You're right. This is my first trip. I'm happy to be here. And we're actively working on my second trip before the end of the year to be working with the board. So live, in person, not via Zoom. And we'll take it from there to see, do we need another trip to come back out and keep the work going? But I think a lot of good can come with working together in person and also try to stay efficient as well.
All right. We want to thank you very much and
Thank you.
hopefully have a good flight home.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Next will be County Executive John Damel, the overview of the 2024 budget.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to answer some questions. We are working on getting Chris back here in November or December, and that is the point. I think you guys asked some really good questions. You will be setting the priorities of our community. Each one of you represent a little bit over 4,000 people. This is a republic, and that's the point. So you will have to talk to your citizens and your people to see what the feeling is, what are the priorities, and it's this board exactly that will be setting those priorities for us. I think that's one of the issues of this document. It doesn't do a good job, in my opinion, of telling a story of what we actually do. It's hard for you as a supervisor to look at a program and figure out how it's funded and how to make it better, or maybe this is not our role. And that's a power I think that this board is due. That's kind of the point of why we're going through this. And just to remind everybody, this was one of the very first Spirit Fund requests that was passed. So this was an investment that we used our Spirit dollars to get us to a budget that, number one, lets the board set the priorities of the county, which I don't think is really been easy to do in the past, and how do we re-envision how this document tells a story about what we do. How do we look at the things that we should be doing, and how do we swallow the things that we have to do. If you look at those 4 bars at Flagstaff, that really small bun, number 4, that would probably be stormwater runoff. I mean, for the airport, it's a big number that we have to pay. It doesn't do anything really for public safety. It doesn't really do anything for all of that, but that's a cost that we're mandated on that we really can't do much about. So how do we minimize those? So I just wanted to thank Chris for coming for this. We'll be back in November or December to do a big strategic planning process with you. The board is going to be the one leading that. It will not be administration. And then we will take our steps for you for the next budget. Also want to give a thank you to Director Elder, who I asked to see if you could do something about the temperature in this room. I think it's better today than it was.
Yeah, a little bit. Another 5 degrees cooler.
So thank you. 5 degrees cooler, but I will take the 5 degrees.
No.
With that, I'd like to welcome you all to the 2024 budget hearings. In this budget, I'm proposing another year of equalized property tax rate reduction in 2024, dropping down 39 cents to $3.84. Our primary challenge is that we can only increase our operating levy by the percent of net new construction from the last complete calendar year of 2022, which allows for 1.23% increase, or $739,000 roughly, over the 2023 budget. We did also receive about $1.7 million of shared revenue with the shared revenue bill that was passed this year. I have proposed a budget which uses about $4.6 million in various fund balances to cover the deficit, but just a little over $1.5 million of that is unassigned general fund balance. This is a reduction over the past several budgets. Throughout the year, not all budgeted funds are spent, nor are all revenues known at the time budgets are passed. Each year, we should expect some of this amount to fall back to the general fund, and we could safely apply an estimate that it will amount to the budget without creating a structural deficit that will cause problems in the future. This year, we are not able to apply as much assigned general fund balance as we have done in the past 2 years for 2 reasons. First, our fund balance in prior year was way above the target range, but we have taken several measures to bring it back down and now is well within target. And second, we have asked the departments to budget realistically, especially when it comes to revenue, even if we are not 100% sure the revenue will come. Therefore, I can't really support using much more of the unassigned general fund balance than we have already included. Our people, our employees, have been my priority, especially in last year and last budget. The labor area of the budget accounts for a large portion of the increase in expense from 2023 to 2024. Total county wages are projected to be about $72 million, $73 million, just under $73 million for 2024, which is an increase of $6.4 million from 2023. This increase is a result of a new compensation plan that was passed in March, which provided many employees with significant wage adjustments. The 2024 budget also includes a 2% annual wage adjustment for all regular employees and a 2% merit pay increase for those employees who qualify, and we have budgeted for all employees to hit that 2%. Without these raises, we cannot meet the needs of our citizens. Additionally, many of these raises are paid for by state and federal governments. There are revenue that comes with it. Departments requested a number of new positions to be considered. Some were requested and are in this budget, and some I think the board should discuss more fully. Others were moved to increase collaboration and maximize revenue. This is the main reason you'll see the 2 child support attorneys move to Corporation Counsel. This move will also increase revenue for Corporation Counsel office. Land and Water has a 3-year position tied to grant revenue. Human Services has multiple positions in this budget tied to ongoing state reimbursements. The management analyst position in finance is intended to help find more areas of revenue, as well as help us with the cost analysis on programs that we have, as well as those to consider for the future. Whenever a position is added, we must investigate the financial sustainability of that position. All the positions I propose are sustainable in the long run. Parks is an example where an additional position was denied. A comprehensive look into improving the maintenance need of our park system is underway. Instead of increasing staff to maintain what we have, how do we reduce the level of maintenance we have or make it easier for our current staff to maintain it? The 2 detective positions in the sheriff's office did not make it in my budget, but it was not due to lack of support. It was simply a fiscal analysis. If you so choose to add any positions, we will find a way to fund them. After my budget process, the state did up our shared revenue payment by about $54,000. And I am confident that we can use this revenue for the Special Victims Detective. We have an entire county to consider, and fiscal restraints are very real. When the time comes, I hope we can make well-thought-out decisions on where to reduce or reallocate costs. The state's new shared revenue is entirely planned to be spent in the sheriff's office. We will see growth in future years of shared revenue, which will make the positions a possibility in future years. But if you choose to add them this year, we will find a way. Fiscal challenges will only increase. We need to find a way to serve our citizens to the best ability while not taking more than we need to do so. I welcome the process and debates of the policy ahead of us all. We were chosen by our constituents to represent them the best way we can. May we fulfill those duties with all of our people in mind. I look forward to the budget hearings and deliberations. Thank you. Any questions on the budget as a whole?
Supervisor Challenger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Executive, for the beginning address there. I think that put a lot of things in context for me that's really helpful as we go through this. Could you remind me, what was the amount that you said was applied for from the undesignated reserve fund for this budget?
1.5.
And that's going to be less than what we're budgeting for interest on the general fund, correct?
Mike, could you answer that question for me? I believe so.
Yes, I don't have that.
Yep.
It was covered, I mean, it's in here, but very well could be.
But that would show as revenue.
That would, right. So, I just wanted to make sure that I understood right now even with the $1.4 million, and obviously budgets don't always come out dollar for dollar.
Right.
But our budget would grow the undesignated
Would Paul
fund.
have it?
No, I believe, Paul, if you want to answer that, I think that revenue is accounted for or predicted.
The
in this.
interest is 2.5 million, but that's included in the budget, so we're still 1.5 million out of the unassigned general fund, including the 2.5 million of interest.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your summary. My question is about the 2% wage adjustment. Is that fully funded in your budget and assumed to go to every employee? And then they can earn an additional 2% merit on top of that?
And that is also funded fully in this budget, correct?
Okay, so this year, then the schedule adjustment that comes later on is actually funded.
Correct.
Wonderful, thank you.
Both are funded in this budget.
Yes, thank you. And can you review the part where you mentioned management analysts, and there was a lot going on in there?
Sure.
And it started with the 2% wage adjustment and then went into a few more things. Could you just review that?
I think I
for
talked
me?
about some of the positions that were granted through the executive budget
Yes.
process.
Yes, thank you.
One of them was moving the 2 attorneys to Corporation Counsel, as well as adding an additional attorney to Corporation Counsel so that we can catch up on Chapter 51s. A lot of those have revenue attached to it. Also, when Corporation Counsel is supervising the 2 child support attorneys, some of Corporation Counsel's time is also reimbursed by the state, so it brings more revenue. And oftentimes, if child support is short an attorney, Corporation Counsel will substitute for them and vice versa. So them working together in the same office will allow them to understand each other's job better and to facilitate that more. The other positions, human services, I'm getting a good feedback here. Everybody else hearing that? All right, human services, there's an addition of roughly 28 positions, but mostly covered by revenues. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a little over 70,000 for all 28 positions?
It's about a net increase of 75,000 for all the positions, but because of some changes we can make in workers' compensation, actually we can cover that and result in a zero levy increase for human services.
Right, so it's not going to cost us any extra levy dollars. We'll have revenues from the state to cover that. And the children and family out there that we're serving will be able to do a better job because there's been concern on some of the vendors we've been using not being able to keep up. Also with land and water, there is a grant attached to that. I don't know if Chad's not here yet, so I'm trying to remember the name of the grant, but that was in that position. So those 3 years of that position in land and water, that's covered through the grant. So all those positions that kind of made it in are ones that are paid through by revenue. And the management analyst position is to kind of help us do more of that. We're kind of moonlighting some of this analysis on ourselves to figure out how do we increase revenues, how do we maximize revenues, how do we look at Chapter 51s and not just charge for our court time, but our prep time and our consulting time and our appeals time. And when we're doing the legal work for other counties, we need to make sure that we're billing them for all the time we're putting on their cases to maximize those revenues. Is that?
I think that covers
okay.
everything.
All right.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, very grateful that the budget is doing 4% and 5% increases to the line item employees. What I am not happy about at all is what I think is an inequitable distribution to some of the department heads. Some department heads jumped in this budget by 25% or greater, and I need to understand why in the world that happened instead of more money going to the line employees. Second question, go ahead on that one, and then I'll ask another one.
Okay, thank you. Most of that was done by, we wanted to make sure all wage adjustments were objective and not subjective across the board with all 1,100 employees. So most of the wage adjustments happen based on time and position. So if you had been in that position for 15 years, you're going to be moved up to range D or whatever it was. There were some adjustments we did for employees that had moved throughout the county. If they moved to a different position, we went back to like 2020. That was some of the amendments that we had with that. But that would be why for if your department had, and you've been in that position for a long time, 15 years, you would have been moved on to wherever that range is, wherever that time is that you've spent on that range. So it was merely objective, and we wanted to make sure that rule was followed across the board with all employees. So we got away from subjective selecting of who got raises. I don't know if that satisfies your question, but that's how we got there.
No, I'm not convinced, but I'll go on to the next one. You mentioned that there might be a way to fund the 2 detective positions.
Mm-hmm.
One detective position, I'm going to say is primary, is combating the fentanyl trafficking through this. I don't know how that was not a priority. The other detective position, internet crimes against children, identity theft, fraud, elder abuse.
Mm-hmm.
How was that taken from the budget?
Well, I would say first, it should be a priority. I don't know why we stopped the assignment in July of 2022. For 20 years, we assigned a deputy position, and it was a testing ground for to become a detective. And then when they come back from the 3 to 5 year assignment of being in the MEG unit, then we would lose them to go be a detective somewhere else. Well, I think that's a travesty. We should find a detective spot then. So I am completely in support of assigning a deputy patrol officer to that position in 3 to 5 years when they're done with that assignment for us to look for a detective position at that time. So it's not that it wasn't a priority for me. If it was a priority, we could assign somebody tomorrow, but I am not in charge of operations over there. I'm not really sure the reasonings, but that's up to them. But if you choose to make it a detective, I'll find a way. The second thing, the internet crimes, we do some great work. We do some fantastic work that isn't really a county's government's job. That being said, I do support the work that has been done. I supported, is it Lieutenant Seawall? Is he Lieutenant? Yeah, Lieutenant Seawall does fantastic work. He used to be split between the DA's office and the Sheriff's Department. We moved him straight to the Sheriff's Department. And then last year, we regraded him to a lieutenant because we wanted to keep him here because he does fantastic work. He does fantastic work, so the Fed should be doing, the Fed should be reimbursing us. So the reason I don't want to grow that program is because I don't want to jeopardize what he is already doing. It does not mean that I don't think that the work is valuable. However, talking with the sheriff, I'm more supportive of it now because this position will also be focusing on education in our county. It's going to be going to high schools. It's going to be going, talking to other people. And then recently talked with working with Damascus Roads and focusing on some of the trafficking that we have here. So now knowing that it's more county related, I am in support of that.
Then just as a follow-up, we don't need to have it here. I want to hear your pathway then to fund these positions as you just said you will do.
Sure. My pathway is the $54,000 of the extra shared revenue. I think that'll be ongoing. That'll cover a chunk of it. And then we do have an adjustment from, help me out, Mike. What was it, the workman's comp? Workman's comp. We overestimated what the workman's comp was needed, and that alone will fund that position long-term. And that's really what I'm looking for. Do I have money for it this year is different than do I have money for it for the next 20 years. And I think that between those two things, we have money for that for the next 20 years.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions. What is the current, or I'm sorry, what is the expected balance of the unassigned fund balance for 24? I believe it's 25.3 million, but I want to make sure that I'm reading that correctly.
$23.7.
23.7?
Correct. It's on page 44 of the budget book, has all the fund projections through the end of 2024.
Oh, okay. So, that was page 47?
44.
44. Okay, and I know I questioned this earlier. What is the adjustment on workers' comp then?
We'll present that in writing tomorrow, but the workers' compensation did need to go up quite a bit from last year because we very heavily subsidized it. We also did, as we do every year, a calculation of the claims and do a weighted average and so forth. Somehow, I have to confess, I made an error and overcharged departments, and it's not just a matter of calculating what we're going to charge each department. I actually calculate a premium, and the premiums apply to different categories of employees, and that shows up in departments' budgets. So it's kind of cumbersome to see how it all fits together, but I redid the numbers and I calculated the premiums wrong. So I've calculated a sheet, an errata sheet showing what they should have been in each department, and it comes out to, I think it's $248,000 less being charged to departments, so it's a substantial amount, even though the charges will still be quite a bit higher than they were in 2023.
And 22, and 21, and 20, and 19. I mean, it's still pretty high, right? So 20 was 258 million, I'm sorry, 258,000. 21 was 565,000. 22 is 575,000. Last year was 387,000. This year is 1.2 million, and if you discount it by a couple $100,000, you're still at around $1 million.
It was meant to be about 950,000, then that'll go up a little bit because of the new position, so it's about 977,000.
Okay, and that puts us at a percentage of wages still pretty high in terms of right? Because if we look at our percentage wage, we're indexing around 0.8, 0.9, and we're going to still be 1.2, 1.3, which seems pretty high for that. We're talking about big dollars. That's why I'm questioning this. I mean, this is not small these are not small dollars here.
No, I expected it to go up quite a bit, and that's why I didn't look as carefully at it when I heard that there were concerns as I might have, frankly, but we did subsidize it quite a bit in some of those years, at least 2 of those years you mentioned, perhaps 3, I'm not 100% sure offhand, because we had, again, quite a bit of fund balance, and so we have targets. This one isn't established as well as a target by the county board as the unassigned general fund balance is, but just internally, we've had a target. And so that fund balance had dropped by, I think, $680,000 in the past year. And so we can't subsidize any further. There is a fund balance. Workers' compensation claims can fluctuate quite a bit. So we had a combination of a low fund balance, and we do a 4-year weighted average on claims to try to predict the claims. And so a very good year dropped off, a very bad year was added on, and so we expected it to be, something like 2.5 times our charges to departments, but yeah, it ended up 3 times instead of 2.5 in rough terms, and so it's higher than it needs to be.
So we had some significant losses?
Yeah.
More so than the average last year?
As I said, it fluctuates quite a bit. More than average, yes.
Right, but this
Not
is
the
out
highest
of,
we've seen.
you would run a, statistical analysis on this. This is way out of what you would find in a typical distribution. We're talking an outlier of magnitude here. So, we don't need to belabor it more. It's a lot of dollars we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, it's a lot of taxpayer funds,
Agreed, and I appreciate the questions. And sometimes when you have multiple storms, highway, for example, the chances of having a workman's comp claim is a lot higher when you're out there picking up trees. We had a couple years, we had a couple storms where we were out there picking up trees without realizing that we had a log grappler for in parks or in maintenance, and we could do a better job of that. And some years you just have more claims.
Right. Just one more. In terms of the positions for the sheriff's office, I will say I'm a little concerned on that as well. I'm going to echo some of the comments there. But my concern also, not to just rehash other things that have been brought up, is the communication between the sheriff's office and administration. Because when I talked to the sheriff's office, it was very clear that they submitted a budget in July, didn't hear about priorities at all until it was presented to the committee to talk through any of those potential issues. And I'm kind of a person where when I look at a budget or any sort of document, the priorities are what ends up on the paper. So I would say that those aren't the priorities of this budget because they didn't make the budget. There's no other way around that. So it's all in action, not just words. So I hope that we could figure out a way to work together. I think we need to reevaluate the process along with the priority-based budgeting.
Yep.
I think we need to figure out a way where we can do a better job of communication and transparency and integration of key stakeholders here, as well as other individuals within the county that may not be under your exact purview. And no answers tonight, but I just hope that we can figure this out for next year.
Well, I'd like to answer that because I will take some accountability for that. When we came back from NACO, both Director Keller and I came down with COVID. So that took a good 12 days out of our budget process. And then the budget process got moved forward with the potential of an emergency C-section with my daughter, which ended up happening. So then we lost another week and a half that we were going to spend calling department heads. So that I will take responsibility. We did have a plan to be a little bit more ahead of this, and I did have a plan to be a little bit more transparent and call department heads to let them know the decisions I made. But we had made a quick just-in-case meeting on budget decisions, and then hopefully I'll be coming back from that doctor's appointment. And then we had meetings planned to continue those deliberations, but just in case, if Baby Damel had to come here, we at least had a backup plan. So that's a little bit why that was rushed this year, and I do apologize for that. That being said, as far as the priorities goes, actions do mean more than words. In 2022, we pulled that position, that assignment of that deputy, that has been signed to do that for 20-some years. You heard this year at JPS that the sheriff is no longer patrolling the 441 corridor. I've had countless calls from both Menasha and Nina and Fox Crossing frustrated that their officers are now patrolling that. So there is resources that were freed up. The sheriff tomorrow could assign a patrol deputy that assignment, and I agree with you. So it's not that it's not a priority. Make the assignment. If he does a great job in 3 to 5 years, that was the plan, then I don't want to lose him. Let's go ahead and add a detective at that time. For me, it's just, it was a decision not to do it now because we can still make that assignment. If whoever is assigned that duty does an outstanding job, we will absolutely make room for a detective in 3 to 5 years. I mean, I'm not really sure what the turnover is on detectives, but roughly probably 3 to 5 years. So the question then becomes, if this is going to be our standard every 3 to 5 years, because that's how long that assignment is, do we have to add another detective? And I don't know if I've had a clear response on that. And as far as communication with the Sheriff's Department go, I think we have a decent communication. We email each other, we talk to each other quite a bit. If things are pressing, I think he knows if he really has a concern to call me, or if I have a concern to call him. I don't know if he is concerned about this. He knows how to ask you guys for positions, and he's probably going to get those positions. It's fine, and we'll probably grant those and find a way to pay for it. So it's not that I don't support both positions. It's just fiscally that was something I wanted to revisit when I came back. We never had a chance to do, and that was what was scratched on paper. So thank you very much for your questions. I do appreciate it.
Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you. I'd like to know your opinion on Supervisor Eisen's earlier comments.
Well, I think it's fine. I think it's fine to put it in the appendix, and I think we're going to do that. It just, those funds usually aren't appropriated through the budget process. So we'll absolutely can add that to amendment, and I think Paul and Mike have already been working on that.
We have the documentation.
Yeah, we have the documentation, so I have no objections to it. I think we want to be transparent. I think that's why the strategy commission has been long and drawn out, so that everybody knows what we're doing every step of the way.
Supervisor Hran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go backwards for just a minute on this priority-based budgeting. And my question is, written down here, how did you hear about priority-based budgeting, number one? And number two, did I hear you correctly with you saying that the $175,000 came from the Spirit Fund? Thank you.
Yes, you heard me correctly. That was one of the first things that we passed to really get a strategic plan, but to make sure that we had everything lined up before that. So we have to know what the programs are before we can come and tell you, hey, here are the things we're doing. What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? Set us some priorities. So it's been a little bit of a process. And what was the first part of your question again? How did I hear about it? Was that it? WCA, working with other executives. So there are 12 of us county executives in this state, and we meet a lot. And this was something that Josh Showman has done a really good job of maximizing their efficiency and reducing the tax rate. So how did you get there? These are conversations that we've had. And then also the question was with Marathon County, how do you get a board of 36 to set priorities? Well, you ask somebody who did it on a board of 38 to send priorities. So is this something that can be done? And actually they said it worked really well to get everybody together and kind of go over the programs, and they talk to their constituents, and that's the beauty of a board of 36. I mean, you have 4,000 people roughly that you represent. That's a lot easier to get the temperature of the room than it would for LA County, where one person represents 2 million people. I don't know how you get the temperature of that room. I have no idea. So hopefully that answers your questions. Thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Comments and questions, John, here we go.
Yep.
My opinion of this budget is it's, in your eyes, and everyone else that worked on this, it's priority-based. In my eyes, it's not priority-based because we had no input. And by not letting the chairman of the committees go to the budget sessions, I think was a mistake. So I'm hoping next year you change that and allow them to go. And in my district, some of the priorities in my district are way different than what would be in someone else's district. So some of my constituents have taken the time to look at this budget and they go, wow, more employees. Wow, I should get a job with the county. I will tell you that I think a government job is good, and it's getting better in Winnebago County. So the taxpayer out there in my district is going, how are we ever going to sustain this? You can't give me an answer because you don't know either, but that was my first comment. So I think if you want the input, like your gentleman told us earlier, that this county board should have input. I don't know what time we're supposed to have input, John. Because if we can't go to a meeting where the departments are doing their budget in August, I don't know. What are we, how do we get our priorities to you from our constituency? But realizing we work for the whole county, not just our district. So 4,400 is correct, but I feel I work for all of Winnebago County, so I want to listen to people tell me what priorities are. So I'll lead right into this non-priority for my district is the 980s. Many reasons, I won't get into the politics of that, but on the 980s, we see what's going on out there. People are calling and asking, what are we paying as taxpayers for those little houses for the 980s? And they know what a 980 is. They're not nice people, but they've served their term, they've served their capital punishments, so they have rights to come here. So maybe you know, or maybe you can get me this information. We at one time had 2 in the trailer. One was elderly and ill and has support 24/7. The other guy signed a document that he wants to stay there. He signed it with the state. He wants to live there for 3 years. So he's taking up a space that would normally be vacated in a year if everybody that was involved with that one person did everything right. So what do we do with the 67-year-old after a year? Does he just stay there because there is no other place for him? But he's taking up a place for an incoming 980? And then the gentleman that signed the 3-year pact with the state, how does that work? We're already mandated to take care of these people for a year. And now you're building 3 buildings for them at $185,000 each. I think there's people in the county that would love to have a house for $185,000 as a taxpayer. These people are not taxpayers. They're criminals. They're felons. They're bad people. So that's not a priority in my district. Opioid money. And I know I asked you for this, but I'm going to ask it at the public. So,
I'm keeping a list, just so you know.
You keep a list. The opioid money, what department is that going to? Human Services? Or does it go in a general fund and it's earmarked as that, and then we draw from it, which I understand we've been drawing from it? That's not my concern, but how come that doesn't have a specialized place for it to go and be taken out? Department heads, very concerning. Everybody in the county is getting a raise. I get that. And you said, so if you've been here 15 years, or you've been here 5, the raise reflects that. Did every department head, besides the standard raise, did they get their box raised for how long they've been here? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
All done by a formula, yeah.
So if somebody's here 19 years, we should expect a bigger adjustment in that box than somebody that's been here 5?
Correct.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Along with every employee across the county.
Boxes all changed?
Yep,
Okay.
correct.
All right. And then if we do the paid time off, that's another plus for employees. Yes, right, okay. But again, I'm not sure how I'm gonna vote on this. We'll see how we go with positions that I want back in. I don't think that we had enough input in this budget. So if going forward, as the gentleman said, we should have a list of what our priorities are. And it will vary between supervisors on what we think is a priority. You agree with me on that?
Yep.
And so who do we give our priorities to? You? Or department heads, or what, where do we go with what our priorities are?
All right, so, well, I just want to make sure that I have them all done before I start addressing them. You want me to? Okay, so, first of all, I agree with you. This is not a priority budget book. It doesn't tell a story. It doesn't, I can tell you how much Human Services spends on paper, but I can't tell you what they do with it. So I completely agree with you. That's the direction we're trying to go. You will be the one setting those priorities. When Chris Fabian comes back, he's going to talk with department heads, figure out what all those, what all their programs are, what they think their priorities are. They're going to bring them to this board. You're going to either agree with them or disagree with them or add your own. If there's something in there that you as a body feels that doesn't, that's not there, add it as a priority. So we're hoping later December or later November or December that Chris Fabian will be back here. I told him it was very important that he comes in person to do that.
So will there be some tweaking going on?
100%. You will be setting the priorities, correct?
Okay. All right.
Yep. And then next year, I will follow your priorities to develop the budget. Again, with the no chairs, loud and clear, we heard that. That was just something that we tried this year. I don't know if I'm going to do that next year or not. We'll work on it. It should not be an issue. We should be able to have those priorities more laid out in the next one. Again, some chairs were there anyways. I didn't remove anybody from that. If they showed up, yep. And
But we need to be more transparent.
yep, and I have no problem with that. Taxpayers and employees, I agree with you. We need to be more attractive so we can hire more nurses so that we can open up the other two neighborhoods at Parkview and start making that self-sufficient. Where if we had the nurses and they were open it with the Medicaid reimbursements we're getting, we would be. Clearly, Parkview has performed better than we predicted in last year's budget.
They made money.
Right. So sometimes you need to make sure that you have employees, you can attract employees so that you can do those things. And also so we can plow roads and maintain a lot of the things that we have to. Non-priority being in the 980, that was the hardest piece of policy I ever had to push here. Again, when that came here, I said, this is not something I'm asking you to support, just understand. I do want to let you know that the one that was there for 3 years, that was a state requirement. That person is now gone, which allows the other one to come in. But the state does give us almost $2,000 a month for rent.
Where does that go? Who gets that money? What department or what category gets that? Is that general funds?
Does that go into facilities? That goes into facilities, right, Mike? Shows up as a revenue of rent to pay back the project over time.
Good, because facilities is going
Yep.
to be maintaining those. Okay.
Right, so yes, we passed that to spend a little bit over $1 million, but we will recoup that over
So
time.
do we only have one 980 in that trailer right now?
Two, because we currently one, there will be another one placed in there very shortly.
Okay.
That's why we were building them, because if we don't have a place for them, we get a fine $1,100 a day. And then these people,
Do you know if other counties are getting that penalty? Like Racine
we
and Kenosha?
don't, but I do know that Racine got ordered to build a facility outside of their control. So they got ordered to do kind of what we're doing.
Or they're going to be in trouble.
Correct. And there are other counties looking at what we're doing, saying, okay, this makes sense.
And the city of Oshkosh still can't find anything on GIS map that meets those 1,500-foot criteria.
Correct, yep,
Okay.
yep.
All right.
Let's see, what was the other, the opioid dollars, is in the human services, and that is separated into a special revenue fund.
Okay.
So when we have that, it has to be in a special revenue fund. That's how you have to do it for the compliance. We have to make sure
Does
it
it
goes.
stand by itself in that fund? Or
Yep.
just,
There's a separate fund just for the opioid settlement dollars.
Cool.
It's just like we've done with ARPA.
Okay.
It's just like we do with the Neighborhood Improvement Fund grant money. It stays in that separate fund, special revenue fund.
And we
until
have to
it's,
follow
been
very
allocated and
closely the
spent.
guidelines set in the agreement that
Of
we
how you
had.
distribute
Yep,
it.
it has to go toward some of the issues that we saw from the opioid crisis. There are other ways for us to spend. We did this with the True Narc system through the Sheriff's Department, but we'll have to do it through a revenue, or through a resolution, and then direct pay. Otherwise, we'd have to create another special revenue account for the Sheriff's Department, because we have to keep the dollars segregated per the agreement and the settlement
but we
that we
can
have.
do it by resolution too?
We could do it by resolution and then direct pay. So it'll go right from the opioid fund to whatever we decide to spend it on.
Okay. That's all I have, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Binder.
I'd just like to say, John, I was kind of disappointed when you took out the Parks halftime position. I mean, we took on Kenny Robo Park, we took on the Jerry Finch Dog Park, and if you look at that Ken Robo Park, the day that they dedicated that, I was proud of that park. I can tell you today, I'm not proud of it. It's an eyesore. The pond you could walk across, the cat could walk across the pond, there's that many weeds in it. Half the trees are dead, the evergreens are dead, the trail's full of weeds. You know, we don't have the time or the manpower to take care of that. We have 4 people in the park system to maintain the Expo, County Park, the boat landings, Jerry Finch Dog Park, Kenny Robo's, and the Waukau Dam. There's probably 150 trees that need to be cut out of there that fell over. You know, I know parks aren't maybe high on some people's priority, but people that work hard, they deserve a nice area for recreation. And that Kenny Robo Park, if I was their family and I went there, I would be pretty disgusted thinking that my dad worked here or served on this for 40 years, and look at this park today. You know, I mean, that is the saddest thing I've ever seen. I took pictures of it and I showed it to quite a few of the supervisors and said, what would you think of this if this was your family? They dedicated this park to you, and now it looks like something that, you know, Winneconne took over for us because we couldn't take care of the park in Winneconne. You know, either we have to put more manpower in the parks, or we have to get rid of the parks. There's only 2 options.
Okay, thank you for those comments. First of all, it's what happens when solid waste builds a park. No offense, I'm not trying to take a swing here, but when you build a park and you haven't talked to your parks department, can we maintain this, then that's kind of what happens. Currently, it is still solid waste land. It is not technically a park. It's paid for by solid waste to keep the maintenance up. So there are a little issues on that. Secondly, you're right. We have a lot of things that are under-maintained, so we have to look at our plan and reduce that. There's been a lot of talk about parking lots that haven't been done. That's because in our outdoor comprehensive plan, we've been looking to see how many people are actually parking in these parking lots, and we're finding none. So why would I repave a parking lot that nobody's parking in when I get turned into a gravel parking lot that is now not an impervious surface that I don't get hit on stormwater runoff off? So that's the types of things we have to do. How do we make it so if we have 3 parks that aren't maintained, that we built them all at the same time, maybe we take out all 3 and we build one nice one, so we make the maintenance easier. We've been asking our parks guy to do a whole bunch of stuff all over the place, and there's just too much to keep up. So how do we look at our park and turn it into a county park, which should be wide open spaces? We welcome soccer fields because you just got to mow them. However, you know, we have to till and get them in line and get some, you know more than I do.
Well, right now they're asking for them to be re-leveled at over $1 million.
Right.
And one thing, asphalt versus basically gravel, they still pay water storm runoff fees. It has to be grass. So even if those,
Correct.
you take that out and put gravel in there, you're still gonna pay the water storm runoff.
You could do a reinforced grass parking lot. Is that what it's called, Mike? Reinforced grass was what we originally had over by the trailer? where it looks like almost lattice down, and then it's not. So those are the things we want to look at. Which one of the things that will be coming to the Parks Committee soon as a presentation in the ARPA Commission. We've been working on a $3.5 million spirit fund, a little less, on an outdoor comprehensive plan. How do we make this easier to maintain? How do we make sure that this is, because outdoor recreation during COVID was used a lot. We had people on the water. Our trail counts were through the roof. We had people outside in wide open spaces. So how do we make that better? But a lot of the things that when Adam was working on it was how do we reduce the amount of maintenance that we have to do on a weekly basis and make it easier for us to do. So with that plan, it was easy for me and Adam to sit there and say, okay, we don't need this position because we're going to make it a lot easier for our people to actually maintain with the thought process going forward.
Well, I think that the position, we'll probably add it back in. I don't think that with what we have with 4 people, it's impossible. You know, you got the expo center,
Correct.
like after a horse show, it takes over a day to clean up and prepare for the next weekend.
Yep.
And all 4 people go there and work on the expo center for like Monday and Tuesday, and then you have 3 days to go and do the county park, the boat landings. You know, it's too much for 4 people. I mean, you can't add more and more stuff to them, and you can say the park belongs to solid waste, we cut the grass, we maintain the trail, and somebody's gotta do it. You know, and I couldn't do it personally. It would take me more than 20 hours to do the work just at Kenny Robo Park, and to do it decent where you can say you have a nice park. And you should be proud of what you have in Winnebago County. You shouldn't have something that's an eyesore, you know.
Yeah, we weren't able to do the weeds thing. I know we talked to the DNR, we haven't got the permit for that, but I know they have been working on that. And as far as the position, I agree with you, but we have to make sure that we get paid for it, which is the reason we had a fireworks convention, and I got lots and lots and lots of phone calls to see what we can do to bring in revenue that's not necessarily tax dollars to go into maintaining these things. There are counties out there that their parks department is completely off the levy. No dollars go into it. We stick quite a bit of dollars, levy dollars, in our park system. Not saying it's not a priority, but we need to figure out ways to get revenue in to make that not a thing. We shouldn't be sticking levy dollars into a park system that can maintain itself. So how do we have more events that bring in revenue? And then once we do that, then we have revenue. And then if we do great, heck, add 2 positions to the park department because we can fund it long term.
Sure, I just want to see like Kenny Robo's Park to be like it used to be, where you could be
I
proud
agree.
of it, and when his family goes there, they don't look at that and say, well, this is disgusting, you know?
I agree.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to appreciate that a bunch of positions in this budget, the added ones are in-housing previously contracted positions. I think that's a long-term trend that as we become more competitive with our wages and time off and other things, will be a good way to continue to look at cost savings, as well as service improvements for our county. And compounding that, thinking about so many of these positions, as you mentioned, the existing lawyers that are attorneys that are moving offices, finding ways that those are revenue supported or grant funded, and tying it through. Forecasting forward to when we have priority-based budgeting, it'll be really nice to see both the credits and debits on some of this stuff, and I appreciate what you've done to weave that in with some of these positions. Can you, kind of thinking about that, could you talk about maybe what a comprehensive program countywide looks like, or what we're already doing related to those positions at the sheriff's office?
Sure, I think one of those would be, actually made some news lately, the STAR program at the sheriff's department. It's amazing. We have solutions recovery coming into the jail, working with their population, connecting them with treatment services, connecting them with services, peer support services, actually having people partake in the Vivitrol program ahead. So we used to wait till they just got out of jail, and now we wait till they're in jail for 7 to 10 days. And we started administering that and counseling them through the whole time. As well as Human Services has people over there working with that population. And the neat thing about that is when the jail would contract with social workers to come in and work with your jail population, as soon as those people leave jail, you can't have contact with them because it's just through the jail. And it's same thing when you get out of prison. If they're contracted, you can't talk to that social worker anymore because you're not in that prison. Having our human services be there allows us to maintain contact with these people after they get out of jail, and to make sure that we're having outcomes that we desire. So when you look at programs, there's more to it than just one department. So yeah, they do kind of interlock. We have programs like that, that we are supporting programs through multiple departments. Does that answer your question?
I was hoping actually you could dive a little bit more into the specifics of those 3 positions that the sheriff had requested, and talk about any other county functions that are related to that work.
Well, it was 2 positions.
I'm sorry, 2.
Yep, 2 positions. And the MEG unit could be part of that discussion. I'm not really an expert in that, but it would be something that I would like to dive into. They've been around for a long time. We should have that discussion. Are they fulfilling the best they can? It's multi-counties. What is it? Outagamie, Winnebago. Can you help me out with the other 2? Calumet and Fond du Lac. So those 4. So those 4 counties working together. We've always had a deputy position assigned to that until July 2022. Can't really speak as much of that. As far as the internet crimes thing, super important work. I think the federal government should be investing more. Since they're not, I am proud of what Lieutenant Salwell is doing, and I am okay. I will find the money if we want to add to it. I'm just fearful if we grow it too much. It's not really mandated, so when that comes around, but that'll be up to you. You can set it as a priority, and then it'll be fine. I don't want to jeopardize the program if we grow it too big. I want to make sure that we continue what Lieutenant Salwell is doing for a long time. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's great, thank you. And then just lastly, this budget calls for some new positions to be added. Some of those are just moving people from contracted status to employment status.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know approximately how many open positions we currently have?
I want to say it's roughly 100. But a lot of those positions are coming over from shelter care. And that's another challenge we're facing. Some of the people that we contract with aren't doing well. Lutheran Social Services, I believe is who it was. We did a lot of work with them. They couldn't get employees. That's why the shelter care shut down for a bit and why we bought it. And then what happens is these kids have to go to a shelter care in Outagamie County, and then we have to go pick them up and take them to school every day. So with some of our contracted services, some of the people that we're partnering with, they're failing. So then when that starts to happen, they have a backlog, we're bringing them in-house where there's revenue, and we can provide the service better, cheaper, and make sure that we're getting to all our citizens.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarifying question on those positions in the sheriff's office that are being discussed. I think I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you feel as though perhaps one of those 2 positions could be funded in the 2024 budget and beyond. In other words, sustainably funded going forward, but just one of the 2.
Yeah, I think we can long-term sustainably fund one of the 2 without having to look for sources elsewhere.
Thank you.
And I'm comfortable saying that.
I wanted that point verified. Thank you.
Supervisor Stir.
Thank you. Thank you, Executive Damel. I guess I appreciate all of the work that you have done. I just I struggle with the shared revenue. To me, free is not free. There are strings attached, and I don't want feds, I don't want control, I don't want nanny state, don't want welfare state. I don't like it, I don't feel comfortable with it, executive. And I feel like you're really compassionate and supportive of that. I am a licensed social worker. I've said this to the board many times. I'm in active status. I've had 10 cases, you know, at least. One of them took 9 years to get the guy on disability because of his disability. I had to do the work. I mean, I like our social workers now, but we also have to understand that there's a lot of politics these days in all of this. You know, the social work department, I'm just going to say, is who administered DEI at the UW Fox Crossings or whatever. This doesn't represent all of us. ARPA, the things that are going on at ARPA and the meetings that I've attended with homelessness and drug use and children need all of this stuff. But I go to the health department and I see, you know, Facts of Life, a guide for teens and their families. Who puts it on? Planned Parenthood. This is all in the track rack, or the brochure rack. Birth control by mail. Nothing sexier than confidence. Trojan condoms. How to talk with your child about sexuality. I think parents need more confidence. We need to understand that people do know how to live their lives. And I struggle with some of this. Control. Opioids, going to human services. We're getting more social workers. I just am struggling with some of the policy making executive. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Boy, I sure hope they don't let the David Albrecht Administration Building go to heck like they did the parks.
Mike, we good with that? Mike says thumbs up.
Supervisor Defferding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just kind of looking at things in the long term. You know, obviously with priority-based budgeting, that's something that is that may happen in the next year or so. That's obviously going to change a lot in our budget, I think, or it could be potentially. But I wanted to talk a little bit about you know, what we could do to like be as efficient as we can for our county residents. I know that there's been 28 counties throughout Wisconsin that has merged their department with Human Services, Department of Human Services. In 2019, Door County did that. They merged their Department of Health with Human Services. They have two separate desks, but it's still essentially reporting to one you know, one other person instead of, you know, two different people. So so this is something that, you know, it's not really a radical idea of any sort. I mean, if we were to look into that, you know, come next budget time, is that something you'd be open in doing? I know that Dr. Topol has has experience with another county before Winnebago County that has done something like this too.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the comprehensive look that we have to look at. How do we make sure that we're all I want less territorialism, I guess, and more collaboration. How do we, because we're kind of working behind the scenes that way a little bit. When we do the human services cohort, it is public health, human services, veterans, Parkview, and child support. And when they sit down, they talk about their challenges and they figure out how they can help each other out. For instance, when you come to veteran services, that should not be the only line we're looking at. So when you come to veteran services, I want to see the veteran benefits I can get for you. Also, what can my health department do for you? What can my human services do for you? If you're older, what can Parkview eventually do for you? What are the things that we could do to wrap the county around you? Combining health and human services, I think would make a lot of sense.
Okay, that's what I thought. I mean, I just wanted to see if you were open to something like that. I kind of got the inkling that you were. So I know that a lot of times people want to defend their own islands, and like you said, it's when it comes to something like that, it's, you know, we should all be on, you know, what will actually benefit the county the best. So.
And I would say we're moving that way. I talk to department heads all the time. We are tearing down silos and building one farm. I know you've heard me say that before. That is just kind of the direction that we're going. That being said, these aren't changes that I think I should be driving. This is changes the board should be driving. You should be driving what those policy decisions are. That is why you are going to be setting the strategic plans. That's why you're going to be setting the priorities. That's why you're going to be making these decisions. And then I'm going to make sure the department heads are following suit. That is what I am charged to oversee.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do apologize. I forgot to ask. Director Collard made a comment about the unassigned fund balance and made a vague statement about what the target is. What is our target monetarily?
That is a great question. We're actually working on that.
Well, the target, according to county board policy passed in 2019, states that it's between 16 and 20% of annual budgeted expenditures. So there are some, I think, ambiguities in the way it's phrased in the policy in terms of exactly what money is included in the numerator and what money is included in the denominator, what fund balances are used. But we do a report annually to the Personnel and Finance Committee, and we did that analysis, and it showed we were at about 18% at the end of 2022, which is when we're directed to measure it for purposes of the fund balance and determining if we have to take further measures to reduce it.
Okay. And I ask because I went back through multiple books, right? And if I'm looking at it correctly, and I'll preface, maybe I'm not, 21, ending 21, we were at 34.6 million. 22, we were at 33.8. Ending 23, we'll be at 25.2. And then projected 24, we're at 23.8 million. Are we concerned about the fact that we're seeing a real hefty trend here on this? I mean, this is a very important resource for the county.
Yes, the answer is yes, which is why I want to take a look at the fund balance policy. I think GFOA is going to come in and work with Personnel and Finance. I believe you guys are set to have a conversation over the fund balance policy to make it a little bit more clear. And it was, we had to follow the policy to spend it down, and we tried to spend it down faster to get us in that range. But we had all these overages, which is why we started pushing truer budgets. I think one year there was a $6 million that fell back into the general fund from human services. Well, let's do a better job of realizing revenues here, get it close to zero. And I think some departments were worried about that, because what if I need to ask for more money? Well, then you come to the county board and you let them do their job and you ask for money, and they thumbs up or thumbs down. That's the way this should work. So no, I'm concerned that our fund balance policy is set a little bit low. And I think we're right around the mid of where we need to be on that policy, which is why the Director of Finance, Paul Kaiser, and Mike Collard are working with the GFOA to clarify, which I think is a very gray fund balance policy, and to make sure that it makes sense, that it gives us a clear number. I think I share your same concerns. I think Paul and Mike both share your same concerns, and I think PNF shares the same concerns. What should this be? And I believe it was poorly written and we have to fix it.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to start departments.
All right. I should just stay right here?
You bet you can.
All right, so County Executive. You can see in everyone's front page that you'll see that programs are listed there instead of goals. Or achievements. And the reason I wanted to do that is...
state your page you're on.
Oh, sure. I'm on page 79. So you'll see this for all departments, and kind of what we've been preparing for is kind of talk about what some of those programs are, if there's any changes in it. And where our time or our dollars are allocated to that. Not everyone will be as comprehensive as the other, but I think we got a good start. There are only really 3 programs that have any adjustments in my budget versus last year. So the first program I want to talk about is the citizen inquiry and response. That is addressed on page, let's see here, 83. You'll find 51101. This is increasing the temporary employee line wages, making the intern position more attractive. And the intern position is what I've been using to help with response times. If you remember Haley, who was here last year, Haley Fox, she's the one that put on the employee appreciation party. When you see the weekly emails coming out from the county, that is our intern taking all our reports, putting that together so that we have these communications. And I think that's crucial to have somebody good, because then it gives you the updates as well, that you can let the citizens know what's going on. Right now, currently we have in that position, temporary employee is Casey Bryant, who came to us, was an intern at Michael Shaw's office. So when you see a lot of these emails coming out, that is Casey putting all this information together. And we're going to develop it for him to listen to and attend all the committee meetings, and then have an update every week on what was discussed in committee meetings, so we can do a better job of getting out to you to let you know what's going on and all our county employees. So that line did go up to $25,000 this year. Again, if you choose to amend that, I will take what I have at the end of this process. The other one is employee support and recognition, special service awards, line item 53566. That is, page 85. That went up to $45,000 this year. We use that. We used that last year to do the employee appreciation event. Also do an employee event at the county fair. We use that to help us do a couple herd games and other things for our employees that's above and beyond wages. The reason it's going up a little bit more is the only thing that we give to employees currently is a clock after they retire for 20 years. So we want some smaller momentums if somebody hits that 5-year mark or 10-year mark. Just to say thank you, we appreciate you, to make sure that we have people staying around. I don't know, Carol, you worked here long enough to get a clock at the end, right? Right? Yeah. But other than that, that's all we do. So what are some of the things that we could do to make that a little bit better? This year at the fair, we were only able to, well, I think we did some snacks or something for employees, but a little bit more, we might be able to buy some fair tickets, other events to get employees out there to. The really cool thing about these events is it allows like a highway worker to talk to a maintenance worker, to talk to a human service, like a social worker, and they get to kind of talk to each other with their families, and you find out just how big your coworkers are, and it really gives it more of that county family feel. So that's one of the reasons that's going up. And the last one, policy advocacy, registration tuition, object line 52001. That is page 84. That is from the 21 revised up to 36. In 2024, this is to be more realistic for the cost of the trainings, to advocate for NACO and WCA, and also money used for different trainings and certifications countywide. So when we have something that works well, I know Professional Development Academy, we've had some leadership training where we've put some people through. So that's more so registration costs for some of these conferences and other training that's available. Other than that, there are not any other significant changes in my budget, and I will open myself for questions on the county executive side.
Don't see any questions, so we'll go Corporation Council.
Thank you. And thank you all, I really appreciate it.
Good evening. You should go to page 86. That's where the Corp Council budget is. And as John indicated, the major change in my budget is to basically be asking for another attorney. And the reason for that is to meet the increased demand of mental health-related litigation, legal counseling and training, coupled with there's an increased demand for crafting of legislation, attending various committee, commission, task force meetings, and to serve the county executive, the county board, and the county departments. I would say that adding an additional full-time attorney will increase the opportunities to raise revenue, particularly in regard to the mental health piece. Chapter 51 involves mental health commitments. And what I wanted the board to know is I wanted to give you an idea as to what we were facing in terms of workload. As of 2023, my office has filed 16 briefs and responses with the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. Now, I will tell you, brief is a misnomer. This is a sample brief that was filed this year. This is one brief. Now, realize there's about 30 pages of research and writing and an appendix, which obviously has to be redacted. So, 16 briefs and responses. You should also know that in November, we are going to have to file 4 additional response briefs. And you need to know that in addition to the 4 briefs that we're going to have to respond to, in addition to the already 16 we have prepared, the appellant briefs, and that's when the appellant files a brief and then we have to respond to it. There are 4 appellant briefs due. So there are essentially 8 more response briefs that my office has to file by the end of the year. The other thing the board needs to know is that there are 11 more cases in the early stages of appeal. Essentially what would happen is we would prevail, the other side would say, we want to see the transcript to see if we have a basis to appeal. So in addition to those 8 additional briefs, there would be 11 more cases. They may not result in a 2023 writing, but they could result in a 2024 writing. Now, to give you an idea, in 2022, my office filed 7 briefs and responses with the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. And this year, we are expecting, well, we've already filed 16 plus 8, 24. The other thing that I believe is important for the board to know is that Milwaukee County, which is a county that handles Chapter 51 cases, which are mental commitments, 54 cases, which are guardianships, and 55 cases, which the Office of Corporation Counsel handles. They do not do children in need of protection or services, which is something my office does. They do not deal with terminations of parental rights. They don't deal with guardianships. But to date, Milwaukee County has, for 2023, has filed 2 briefs and 1 stipulation. And they have 13 full-time attorneys. We have 3 full-time attorneys. Given the basically increased demand, that is why I have asked for an additional attorney to help my office. Now, as John alluded to, there was also a recommendation of moving the 2 child support attorneys to my office, which would allow more flexibility. The child support attorneys, and I want you to know this, have their own caseload. They have probably over, I was told, about 700 cases a year. So certainly they will be able to provide flexibility, but those two attorneys are not going to be able to fill the need we have with basically the trainings, the appeals. And again, if it's an out-of-county resident, we can bill the state for all of our time. So that is essentially the big demand that my office is making, because obviously Chapter 51s are mandated by state statute, so we are required to do this, and that's what we are trying to do. So if you go to, let's see, line 43016, we are anticipating that there would be an increased revenue in that we would get another attorney, assuming the board agreed, coupled with the fact that the attorneys who are still in the office would be able to spend more time in terms of researching and doing things of that nature. You will see that actually the wage line 51100 again reflects the fact that there would be a brand new attorney and 2 child support attorneys. You should know that the child support attorneys the county is reimbursed 66% for every child support attorney who is working full-time, and they're reimbursed from the state. So that is a piece of the reimbursement, coupled with, again, billing out to other counties if we are doing work for the other counties and they happen to be in this county. Commensurate with the wage increase are the fringe benefits, which you would see. There is an increase in line 52001, which is registration and tuition, because obviously the attorneys would have to continue their CLE requirements. There is, and I'm just trying to, membership dues would go up. Membership is, in order to be a member of the Wisconsin Bar, the cost this year was $507.50 per attorney. So if we add, we have 3 attorneys now. If there's another attorney plus the 2 child support attorneys, it would be 6 attorneys. So that's reflected in 53502. And that's basically the highlights of the budget. Oh, I should also say, to assist in the funding of this new attorney, a current administrative associate 3 position is being eliminated. So currently we have 3 paralegals and an administrative assistant, but again, to try to make ends meet, we are eliminating the admin 3 position and keeping the 3 paralegals. So between the revenue from other counties that would be generated by having another attorney, between the revenue with child support and eliminating that administrative associate 3 position, again, we are trying to use the taxpayer dollars efficiently. So does anyone have any questions?
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adding a couple of attorneys feels like it's going to be a little more administrative work. Your team has taken on a lot of additional visibility within the county board structure. I think that's been very helpful for getting early discussions on the right track. Do you feel like there's enough sort of leadership capacity to continue to support the board and the committees in that helpful, expanded way, and also take on new staff like this?
Yes, I believe so, because I have another attorney, then that other attorney can basically handle some work that perhaps I might handle or another person would handle. There's a perfect example. So we have 3 attorneys, and 1 attorney took vacation last week. So that meant we had 2 attorneys covering what 3 attorneys cover, which ideally should actually be covered by 5 or 6 attorneys. So yeah, I think it would help.
Okay.
Now, I absolutely know that with child support, there is going to be another level of reporting to the federal government, but I'm prepared to do it, and if that means, again, moving forward and trying to meet the needs of the departments, heads, and county board and county executive, that's what we will do.
Okay, and then can you tell me some of the functions that the admin 3 was doing, and where those responsibilities will now either fall, or if they're falling off of what's being offered?
No, actually, the current paralegals are taking on a lot of the work of what this other admin person did. That person was dealing with a lot of the in-rems, a lot of the guardianships. I have 2 of my paralegals here, and they're working very hard and very efficiently. When I was looking at my office and how things were being run, I believed that we did have room to eliminate the admin position. That was a new position that came up last year because I thought we needed it. But looking at what I saw, I needed an attorney more than I needed an admin 3. And so that's what I did.
Okay. And then my last question is, can you give us some examples of what line 55001, contracted legal services, is either planned to be used for this year, or, what it has been used for in the past?
Sure, let me just pull it up. This was in terms of dealing with specialty areas, in terms of tax questions, in terms of outside investigations. If there's a situation in the county that would require an attorney other than someone from my office to look at it, perhaps with, just suggest that it's a totally clean slate, it would be that. It would be serving parents in terms of the Geneva Convention. We had a termination of parental rights case, and the father was in Mexico, and so we had to go through a lot of hoops in terms of getting this person served. So that was an example. I'm just trying to think. Outside investigations and overflow. So we had one attorney who wound up being out for a month on medical leave, and so we needed to get an attorney in to help with that. So again, if I have another attorney, I have more layers, and that will help in that line item.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked this question at JPS, and I'll just ask this question again so that the county board knows. In regards to Chapter 51, obviously, Winnebago County is special to other counties because of we have the Mental Health Institute here. So we have a lot of, because of that, we have out-of-county residents. They get Chapter 51. They're sent to the Mental Health Institute. They assault someone on staff. It turns into a criminal justice issue. And then, it now turns into something, that's county responsibility, at least when it comes to, the legal aspect of it. And, I did have one conflicting observance from the public defender saying that we would have to pay for all of that. But from what you said at JPS, we actually bill the other counties, for that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If it's an out-of-county resident, the statute allows us to bill that other county, and we do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. And I just I wanted the county board to know that too, when it comes to things like that, that we do find ways for us to stay financially solvent throughout this process.
So what happens is there is a facility called the Wisconsin Resource Center. It actually has a wonderful lake view. And if there are inmates from other facilities, let's say Waupun or Dodge Correctional, and they are having a mental health crisis, they are moved to the Wisconsin Resource Center because that facility has a number of physicians and psychiatrists and physician's assistants who basically specialize in this. So when I get a resident from another county who moves to the WRC and there is a requirement, let's say that, well, there needs to be a probable cause hearing, we have an issue, this person is a danger to himself or others, then we go forward. But again, as Supervisor Defferting had said, if the person is from a different county, then we bill for those services.
And, one last question too, and this is just something I thought of now is, you know, how long does it take for you to get payment for that, typically?
It's done on a yearly basis. And we need to submit the bills by early June. And I know the finance department gets it in by June 30th. And actually, I think we typically get paid by the end of August. But it's a yearly, but I can tell you, I am adamant that my staff has to keep up with billing. And you can tell, I will always ask my paralegals, have we gotten the bills out for the week? Because obviously they add up, because again, depending on the week, we could have 15 hearings in a week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just it, is, you know, because of Chapter 51, we're beholden to state statutes and, you know, and because the Mental Health Institute is in our county, we're kind of, our hands are tied in that aspect. So, you know, this is just simply a reaction for us to make sure that we're still financially solvent through this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Bender.
I guess my question would be, could that new attorney be a kind of assigned to the county board? I know I've talked to you about getting the information for me about going from a county exec to a county administrator, and it's been at least 3 months and I haven't got an answer back.
Well, I think I did tell you that my intern looked at it and I need to vet it. But, you know, as I said, I will go in to the office on a Monday thinking I have these 5 items that I'm going to get to. But then within 5 minutes, the 5 items are relegated to a lower portion of the pile because something more is pressing. I will determine where attorneys are assigned, but I believe that if we do have another attorney, it is going to give us more breathing room. I will also tell you that we have had an influx of public record requests.
Right, well, I'll just give you my point of view on it, is I wanted that information so that maybe this county board would want to form a committee to do a study, and I would have liked to have done it before the new county board was seated in April, and now it's getting too late. So you can just forget it because it's too late now to move forward with it. But when I asked you like that 3 months ago, I had plenty of time to do that. But it just went on the back burner, and it's like, sometimes we ask and it's like, we're not very important. And I think that we represent the citizens of Winnebago County and we deserve an answer.
And quite frankly, I believe I try to get all of you an answer as quickly as I can, and I am pretty responsive. But when we have statutes that require us to respond in a timely fashion versus a supervisor who may ask for something, and as I said, and I think I told you this just the other week, there was a situation where I've had an intern look at it.
I think 3 months, I should have got an answer.
I'm just telling you that. And I will also tell you there may be other supervisors who might have asked something, and I might have met with the person along with other people, and if there's no basis to proceed, because perhaps the answer is in statute, you know, that's the answer. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just appreciate it, I guess, if you do get another attorney, that we would get a response in a reasonable amount of time. I would think 2 weeks is a reasonable amount of time. Shouldn't go by months.
It depends on what basically is hitting our desk. If we are getting appeals, if we are getting public record requests, which might ask for thousands of documents, and I will add, my office is not the custodian of the records, but we do have to vet it to make sure that confidential information is not being distributed. So there's a lot of things going on. But yes, I appreciate your
I believe if the
patience.
county exec or somebody on staff asks you, they're gonna get an answer in a reasonable amount of time. I sometimes don't feel I do.
Okay.
And all I'm asking for is if I ask something, tell me where to look it up. I know it has to go to an election, you know, but I would have asked you to, you gave me the information, I would ask you to help me write a resolution, I would ask to form a committee, and the committee could have decided if it's something we wanted to pursue or not. It's too late now, but, you know, maybe with a new attorney, it'll go better in the future.
Supervisor Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mary Ann, 16 briefs that you mentioned you had to file, 16 briefs, right?
I'm sorry, 16.
You said you had to file 16 briefs, is that correct? 16?
Oh, briefs.
Briefs?
Oh, yeah, briefs, yeah.
Is that typical year to year? It's, you know,
This year, as I said, last year, we had a total of 7, okay?
Okay.
Which is still a lot, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
time. I would say for each brief, because you've got to go through the lower record, and you've got to fashion the argument, it could take at least 60 to 75 hours.
okay. So.
And that
yeah.
doesn't take, that, again, you know, you still have your court calendar, you still have your department head opinions, you still are going to committee commission, meetings.
Okay, so 7, 16, and then, do you know have any idea what maybe a year-to-year average is over the last 5 years, roughly?
I will tell you, we have had more mental health appeals over the last 5 years. I
Okay.
can't give you the specific
Okay.
numbers. I know that this year is a banner year, because,
Mm-hmm.
again, if we've already filed 16 and there are going to be 8 more by the end of the year, with 3 attorneys, that is, and again, I mean, I look at Milwaukee County,
Yep.
and they have had 2 briefs
Right.
this year. Now, they have said it's a light year, and they do not handle terminations of parental rights or children in need of protection or service appeals.
Is that
But
where you're
still.
getting most of your,
Most
having
of
to
the
file?
appeals are coming from mental health.
okay,
So we've prevailed, and then the public defender would then say, you know what, I think we want to appeal it. And I will also point out that the local public defender's office will not write the actual brief, because that is sent over to Madison. So, again, my office is writing the briefs.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and on the wages, you're gonna add an attorney, and then you're bringing over 2 attorneys from
Child support.
child support. So the wage increase that you have on,
738, 192? Is that?
I'm just looking
Oh,
at
51100.
51100.
Right.
That's 123 increase in 1 year. Are you showing that net of the reimbursements from the state? For
I
those 3?
believe that was incorporated into it.
So it's a net number?
Let me just verify.
Well, I have to believe it is, because it's only 123,000.
Yeah.
And you're adding 3 attorneys, so I mean, you know.
Right. There's going to be the amount from child support, but there's also going to be the amount that we're billing for out-of-county residents, because I'm going to have another attorney who could spend more time in terms of
Okay.
responding.
Yes, the increased revenue that you'll get to, how much of this added expense will be offset by the revenue increase roughly? You have any idea on that? So if you're gaining, if your wages are going up 123, how much will you get back in additional revenue by having the,
We have, I'm just trying to see this, hold on one second. We are thinking that there is going to be revenue of 150,000.
so you're covering it?
Basically, we are.
Okay. So that's a better justification for adding an attorney if you're covering your costs by doing that, right?
That's what we are hoping to do.
Okay. And then on that opens record request thing you mentioned, how much time and resources, can you dollarize that to give us an idea of how much money that's costing?
I can tell you, because the county executive had asked me how much time is going into it. Because again, it's not just my time, it's also some of my staff's time. And and I'm sorry I don't have, I bet you last week, or maybe the week before, I wouldn't be surprised if I spent 20 hours going through some of the public records requests.
Okay, but let's say you were annualize your costs. Any idea how, on an annual basis, what your time is worth, or you're having to spend, on opens records request,
Well, my billing rate is $300 an hour.
right? Okay,
And again, the last few months have been pretty intense for public record requests, even though, again, we are just vetting what is provided to us to make sure that confidential material is not being provided, such as,
Okay.
social security numbers, personal phone numbers, personal addresses,
Okay.
that type of thing.
so 300 an
So-
hour, and you said 20 hours, right?
Well, that was just like probably the last week or two.
A week?
Yeah, this is not a year. No. There's been a lot of time spent on that. And again, that doesn't include my staff's time.
So again, can you make an estimate of what on an annual basis that's costing you?
I can't right now because
Okay.
I don't want to mislead you. But I can tell you what has occurred. Again, I probably spent 20 hours over the last week to 2 weeks going through public record
And it takes you
requests.
away from other work?
No question.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Albert.
I just wanted to comment that former Judge Williams created that fifth standard for,
Oh, really?
yeah,
For mental health commitments?
for the health, for the,
Yeah.
right.
Supervisor Stara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. So I became aware this week that at the federal level, since May, millions of dollars have been put into mental health, and it will get up to $1 billion in mental health. How does this impact your department? Is there shared revenue from that?
I don't know what you're referring to, but I can tell you it will, the state will reimburse us for out-of-county mental commitments that we do.
Okay.
So when I'm telling you that I think we're going to get $150,000 in revenue, that is based on my department billing the counties of residence of those patients who are at the WRC who are not residents of Winnebago County.
Okay. How much money do you, maybe I should see this here, but how much money does the office spend on the county board? Any rough estimate on the service to the county board? Attending committees and providing legal, is there?
I can tell you I go to all JPS meetings, PNF meetings, since February ARPA meetings. If someone needs me, let's say the Board of Health, I will go to that. I will go to solid waste meetings. I will go to highway meetings. I will go to facilities meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things being on the planning and zoning is.
Oh, and planning and zoning.
Yep.
You asked me
yep.
for planning and zoning.
And I do appreciate, I've heard that you work weekends oftentimes so I do appreciate your hard work. One of the things that I wonder about, kind of going along with Supervisor Bender, is that I would like to see a council that would really dig into how to push back the feds and the state as much as possible, how to really keep our own sovereignty at the county level, so on and so forth. I'm not sure if you're serving the executive and serving in all these other capacities, not you personally, but the office itself, like how you could meet those needs on the planning and zoning. For example, as you know, with Sawyer Creek, that was in my district, that took hundreds of hours for me to try to represent you know what I mean? I'm not quite sure if there is a conflict of interest. Can you answer that? Meeting.
All I can tell you is that ethically, as an attorney, I will do what the law says and what my interpretation of the law says, as will the other attorneys in my office. So again, you can have 5 attorneys and get 5 different interpretations, but I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize my bar association memberships in any of the various states where I am admitted. So, yeah. Thank you. You're welcome.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yes, business I had was victimized by an embezzler that still owes us a substantial amount of money. We got a hold of her probation agent to find out when can we expect some of this and what are some of the terms of her probation. And we were told that she can't give us that. We have to submit an open records request. So if the probation agents are passing the buck, it's not really fair to complain about all the open records requests you're getting. That might be part of the problem.
Yeah, well, first of all, we don't deal with criminal law in my office, but I'm not complaining about public records requests. All I'm telling you is it is a huge drain on my office's time. The public has a right to make the request. Assuming there is a record, they will get what is available, again, assuming there's no issues with confidentiality. But I am just telling you that public records has taken a lot of time for our office.
Supervisor Ellenberger.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of go on a little bit of the public records request also. I was just doing numbers just real quick on my calculator. I was kind of surprised. I mean, if you're doing 20 hours in a week and a half, I mean, it's 6,000 just from you, not including your office. And then if you're getting multiple, I mean, what are you, I mean, that, is there any way, I mean, we were kind of discussing this a little bit that, you know, is it possible to third party outsource this part? I mean, I don't know. I mean, is that why, that's probably one of the reasons why you wanted to hire an additional attorney. I get that, but.
Well,
I mean,
no, actually, public records was, the reason for an additional attorney is because of all of the mental health work, there's no question. That was the initial reason for it. But I will just say, recently, there has been a tremendous amount of public records requests. And we're not talking about looking at maybe 100, you know, records, and obviously, the requester has to narrow and tailor the request. There has to be a time period involved. There has to be a subject matter involved. But I had one request where the initial request was, I believe, over 4,000 emails that I had to look at, but then I said this had to be narrowed down, so it got narrowed down to about 500. But that's just one request. So it takes time.
I feel like it's a little bit of a, I don't know how to phrase this, egregious a little bit. I mean, it seems, I mean, is there a point to it? Is it for a case? Is it for extra knowledge that somebody wants? I mean, it seems a little.
Well, the public, under Wisconsin law, the public has a right to make a public record request.
So there's no boundaries to that.
Well, there
except
are.
for-
I mean, you have to put basically limitations as to, you can't say, I want every email from 2000 to date, you know, written by, let's say, Supervisor Ellenberger. I mean, there has to be a subject matter, there has to be a time frame. So then, if there is none, I might respond and say, thank you for the request. We need to have more parameters listed, that type of thing. But again, realize we have 27 departments. So these requests might go to the various departments, and then they have to come to me so I could vet it to see if, you know, this information is discoverable or not. So, yeah, it can take time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make the point, you know, we've talked about this year, about briefs, about FOIA, about this active county board, but I know at JPS we talked about looking in the future, and we don't see any of these things going any less than what we see. We see that same level of velocity going in the future, and that's the reason why that we need this position, right? It's because this is not just an anomaly this year. We believe that the board's going to continue to be active. The briefs,
Proactive. And the briefs, there's no question, with the mental health situation, this is not going to recede.
No, we know the mental health crisis that we face. And so I just want to make sure everyone understands that here on the board, that this is solving a future problem. This is not just about, hey, we've had an uptick this year. No, this is, we believe, is going to be a trend, definitely in the briefs and perhaps on the board side too.
And I appreciate your clarification. Yes, there were, 7 last year, and so far there's 16, and there are going to be 24. Will there be 24 next year? I don't know, but I'm sure there are going to be a lot more than 7 with what we've been seeing.
Right.
And that's another piece too. On the probable cause hearings, a couple of years ago, we could basically say, okay, we're going to have a probable cause hearing. That is the first hearing in a mental commitment hearing. And maybe it would last 30 minutes, 35 minutes. Now, our probable cause hearings can run for 2 hours. So it's much more adversarial, and it's taking a lot of time. Yeah.
And just one other comment, I've been asking for updates about once a quarter at JPS on all that you're doing, and it was mind-boggling for me to understand the complexity of all that this department does. And I think it's important for everyone to know that beyond the board, there is an immense amount of work when you're talking about child protection, CHIPS and the briefs and guardianships.
And protective placements.
We're talking significant. And then we have the county board. And I know
county departments, the 27 county departments.
Right. And my only point is, I have made this comment before, and I kind of echo a little bit with what Supervisor Bender was saying, in a part in that I do think it's a lot for one group and the group we have. And I definitely think another attorney is needed. I think there's probably more infrastructure that should be in place, especially as we look at how active the county board has been and will continue to be.
Well, again, not that, I think the district attorney's office, and mind you, they deal with all criminal, I think there are 10 attorneys in that office. I spoke with the public defender, and I believe they have 9 attorneys in their office for this county. So, and again, we have 3 attorneys.
Supervisor Albrecht.
I guess knowing you through the years and how conservative you've always been, that if you needed somebody like that, another person, you wouldn't have asked for it. So if you're asking for it, I believe that you really need it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mary Ann. Just to echo, Supervisor Stafford and Supervisor Albrecht just said what I was going to say. I am fully in support of the increase in position. No problem with that. Do want to thank you. The people that I've interacted with most, Melanie and Andrew, have always been very responsive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other lights, I thank you very much. I'm going to skip the county clerk and go to the county treasurer. I know she has an appointment tomorrow morning, so we'll have the county treasurer come up and can spot how fast talking, you guys.
I'll make my portion really short and sweet for you. Hi, everybody. Amber Hapa. So in short, the county treasurer's office, we do all of the settlements with the state and the taxing jurisdictions. We collect postponed second installments and delinquent balances for 18 of our municipalities. For the 4 major cities, we collect their delinquents, and occasionally, if they're delinquent for a period of 2 years, we can foreclose and then we sell those properties. Pretty much the biggest change in the budget lines is the fact that my interest on banking is showing a pretty significant increase due to higher interest rates. I am looking to purchase some headsets for my staff to better balance the high call volumes that we have and our task loads. I'm also looking to purchase some label makers to help bring a little bit more efficiency to some of our certified mailings for our foreclosure process. But I guess I'm just open for questions at this point.
Supervisor Albrecht.
I think that we were very fortunate to get you and the clerk, new clerk, at that time. I think you both do a tremendous job.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other lights? That's it. So we thank you very much.
Did I keep under my 3 minutes?
It's 8:59, believe it or not. So, like I said, tomorrow morning at 8:30, we'll start right back here. If you want coffee, rolls, milk, soda, water, whatever, be here before that. It'll be in the back. Sorry, we leave our stuff here. You can leave our stuff here. Julie's got the keys, so. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Motion made, second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. 9 o'clock.